Se čujemo? Odlično, zvučice rade, dobrodošli, Slobo. Hello to everyone. My name is Miša Đurković. I'm happy to be able to greet you all on behalf of the Institute of European Studies. Today we are starting with the conference we announced, and it's called Balkans and Turkey in Transition. I will just briefly afterwards tell a couple of words about what was the idea and what do we expect to see today. But before we start with the work, I will first of all ask our dear friend, whom I can greet in alive, which is very good change, actually after Zooming for the last 1.5 years, actually almost. Dr. Klaus Fiesinger, who is the chair and regional director of Southeastern Europe office of Hanns Seidel Foundation, Hanns Seidel Stiftung, which is our partner in many good deeds that we succeeded to persuade in the last several years. And today they are our official partner and co-organizer of today's event. So, Mr. Fiesinger, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hvala vam. Drago mi je da sam ovdje. It's really a pleasure to be here after, as just mentioned, a long time. And I can also emphasize that this conference today with our close cooperation partner is the second conference of this year, but the first conference, what we made in some hybrid modus, where also guests and auditorium is again among us. The first conference about methodology of this new EU negotiations changes was a pure online discussion, and so it is really a pleasure that at least a few people can be among us. On the other, this is now the advantage, can be virtually connected with us, and a few of them I know also personally. So the topic, as I think, and Miša Đurković already mentioned this, very interesting. It is no more sacred that beside EU also another external powers are coming in increasing positions, involvement, influence. America and Russia strategically, China economically, and Turkey meanwhile also as some player at the Balkan region. And it is evident, in my opinion, that Turkey in Southeast Europe region has to different states, different relations, to Bulgaria very friendly as neighbor, to Serbia friendly too, but according to Greece, of course, with certain tensions and difficulties. And I think it is very good from the Serbian perspective to make analysis and evaluation about this situation. As you know, I only wanted to have a short hint that Turkey and Serbia have a long history behind themselves, but each of the countries are making a very different interpretation of that history, a glorious past versus slavery. And even more, it is eye-catching that a little bit more than 10 years ago, both countries decided to have a new chapter in their relations, in their cooperation, mainly economically, of course, but a new chapter despite of existing differences as the Kosovo issue and some issue else. And for me as a foreigner, it's also eye-catching that these economic points are not in the so-called Sanjak in Serbia, but apart from that, that they are at the corridor 10, which is directly a connection between Turkey and Europe and European Union as well. So I think we have much to talk and to discuss today, and so I give back to the moderator. Thank you very much. Hvala vam na pažnji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiesinger, and I'm happy that I see now something like almost 15 person alive, which is really great change after Zooming and so on, and a lot of very good friends and experts who are with us through Zoom, even our colleagues from Turkey, and I'm really happy that I can see Professor Umut Uzer and many other there. I'm happy that I can also say hello here to His Excellency Ambassador of Greece in Serbia. Let me be precise, His Excellency Yorgos Diakofotakis, if I'm right. Sorry for maybe wrong pronunciation. And I'm happy also that I can see almost all of our presenters who are here with us. Before I give a floor to our colleague, Dr. Igrutinović, who will be moderating the first panel, I just wanted to add a couple of more of the facts and the reasons why we engaged in this small project. Actually, since 2010, I think Institute of European Studies is in a way consecutively following actually this recent development of relationship between Turkey and the Balkan countries, where we hopefully still belong. And we succeeded really to gather a very nice group of people in several locations. Of course, we had a lot of guests from Turkey. I mentioned Professor Umut Uzer, but also Professor Çağrı Erhan, Professor Birgul Demirtas, one of the leading experts for the relationship of Turkey with the Balkan countries, and so on and so on. And in 2012, we organized a very big conference, actually here trying to understand what is really going on with the Turkey, because as we all know, from the period of 2002 to 2012, approximately for those 10 years, Turkey changed very much within itself, but also in many ways changed its foreign politics. And at that time, we organized the conference, and the next year we published these proceedings, pretty big volume actually, which is called Turkey Regional Power, ? In which we really wanted to understand how first identity of contemporary Turkey is changing, starting from, let me say, ideology and value system, then the cultural politics, system of Cemaats, military politics, and so on and so on. And in the second part, we wanted to see these changes in Turkish foreign politics, especially in relationship with USA, but also in Middle East, Caucasian, Black Sea region, Central Asian region in a way, and Balkans, which was the third part of our investigation. We continued to work on these issues in many times in the future, and recently we had the chance also to publish the last book of Professor Darko Tanascović, which is, as you all know, our leading orientologist and Turkologist in a way, who really helped us to organize the previous conferences and so on. And this is his book called In Serbian Pusto Tursko, in a way we could say nostalgia for Turkey or remembering of Turkey or whatsoever, and which is very good, let me say, overview of the Turkish internal and foreign politics within last 10 years. And logically, we also are happy that in the meantime we got some strong expanding of our capacities, that now we have two young researchers, PhD candidates, hopefully soon doctors of sciences, who will be today also with us as the presenters at the end. This is Ms. Sladjana Zdravković and Mr. Srbulju-Pejović, who are pretty fluent in Turkish, and in that way we're really continuing to follow this development, because as we will see, Turkey is the factor for us, not only in historical but in contemporary ways. And we wanted really to make now some kind of overview from the Balkan perspective. I will speak more about in my presentation what was actually that we wanted together, but as you all know, and I'm finishing with that, usually you could find a lot of pieces of work. Some of them are really brilliant, like Birgul's and so on, in which you have Turkey and the Balkans mostly followed by our Turkish colleagues or people outside of the region. We wanted to see it. That's why we don't have experts from Turkey today, but we wanted to focus how actually countries from the Balkans perceive this new, let me say, engagement of Turkey in the Balkans, and what are the perspectives and the prospects for our future cooperation, miscooperation, misunderstanding, and whatsoever, and so on. So this was basically idea. And I'm really happy that we succeeded to gather very, very qualitative group, team of people who will be today with us. One of them we even succeeded to bring to Serbia and to Belgrade, and I'm glad that today here in the office with us is a young professor from Sarajevo, Mr. Jahja Muhasilović, who defended his PhD last year and published yesterday. We had 2 hours of debate on his last book, actually published in Turkey in English, which is called Soft Power, Turkey's Soft Power in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Sanjak, which was very, very nice presentation of the work of Diyanet, cooperation of local municipalities, and exchange of the students. These were 3 focuses of his work, actually. So I will not, without further ado, I would ask our friend and colleague Igrutinović to take the floor, and so I could continue afterwards as a presenter in a way. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Miša. Well, we have divided speakers in terms of bilateral relations of Turkey with neighboring Balkan countries, and our first panel consists of 4 speakers. Miša will speak on Turkey and Balkan relations overall, so a bit of a regional approach there. Then Professor Constantinos Filis from Athens, from International Olympic Truce Center. He will speak about Greek and Turkish relations. Mr. Marian Karagyozov from Institute for Balkan Studies of the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences will speak on bilateral Bulgarian and Turkish relations. And our guest, Dr. Albert Rakipi, he's a director of the Albanian Insittute of International Studies from Tirana. He will speak on Albanian and Turkish relations. Then we'll have a brief, about 15 minutes of debate. We'll be taking questions both from through Zoom chat. You can write them down there, or people who are in the room actually can raise their hand and ask the question. We'll be able to manage our hybrid Zoom and in-person format, I'm quite sure. So Miša, please, the floor is yours. We have about 10 to 15 minutes for each speaker, and we'll conclude the panel in about 1.5 hours.
Thank you, Milan. Just one technical issue which I forgot to mention, and I have to apologize to Professor Ledion Krisafi from Tirana, who is today with us, and he will be presenting actually on the issue and the topic of relationship between Turkey and Albania. And as far as I understood, he will present his common work with Professor Rakipi, who was our first contact there. In any way, we are really happy to greet Professor Krisafi as well. And now I will start with my presentation, trying really to make, in a way, some kind of initial additional explanation of what we had and what we wanted and what we hope to get in the future proceedings. Actually, the whole idea is, beside this debate and conference today, to have hopefully until the end of the year, maybe even before that, one good proceedings that will also have that in a published way, what we are going to discuss today. And I will start with, hopefully not to exaggerate with the time, with the issue which I called Balkans and Balkans and Turkey local perceptions. Okay, so of course I will really have to skip over, there are a lot of issues, but I just wanted to have them all displayed and to give some framework for our future debate in a way. So, of course, we all start from the famous Davutoglu speech on 16th of October of 2009 in Sarajevo, in which he announced, as we all know, greater Turkish presence in the Balkans in the future. And he also spoke in very, let me say, in the terms in which we are not accustomed at the Balkans to speak about the centuries of Ottoman ruling. And of course, as Professor Fiesinger already mentioned, it initiated debate on neo-Ottomanism, which is often mentioned here. Professor Tanasković, who was our guest yesterday, had a book on this issue, but I also have to mention that it's not something that is used by non-Turkish authors. The famous Professor Hakan Yavuz already in 2006 spoke about neo-Ottomanism as the basis of contemporary Turkish foreign politics. So idea of Rumeli or Rumelia once again became an interesting topic in space. And in any case, leaving aside these terminological debates, actually calling it neo-Ottomanism or the second opening of the Balkans. The first one was during the time of President Turgut Özal. In that way, we had the first Turkish opening toward the Balkans. Turkey's greater presence as a regional contender has become a fact, and this is something which we start from. A lot has been written about it in Turkey, and the topic of relationship between Turkey and the Balkan has produced a lot of debate, elaboration, and writings there. And as I already mentioned, Professor Demirtas, Professor Erhard Turbedar, who is also from our region in a way, and of course knows very well both sides of the stories, then very good MA thesis of Beylur, then the special issue of the journal Perceptions edited by Birgul Demirtas, and a lot of other publications, including Tepav Institute and so on. But on the other hand, I thought that we at the Balkans didn't have some kind of, let me say, general understanding of what who is doing, you know, because when you try to Google bit through academia and so on, you find a lot of people who have wrote about that from the perspective of the Balkan countries, but I didn't see actually that somebody tried to gather them and to get some let me say, joint or common perspective of that. And that was actually the idea that we wanted to do that for the first time. So how do actually the basic issue for us, the basic question is, how do the Balkan countries perceive this greater interest of Turkey in the Balkans, or Romania, speaking that historically, and the intention to renew those ties on the basis of so-called, as we all know, historical and geographical depth, as Professor Davutoglu used to say, and to play definitely a greater role as an aspiring regional power. Of course, just historically, there is an interesting precedent from the 30s, Balkan Alliance from 1934, and partly from the 50s, as we all know, agreement with Yugoslavia and Greece in 1954, and that's the reason why Turkey is still perceived and treated within the structure of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Serbia as a neighborhood country. So when already at that time, Turkey sought to be a fact of the Balkan politics, again through cooperation, at least with certain countries. 1990s brought this first opening, which I mentioned, marked by greater interest, of course, basically in the Muslims and position of Muslims in the Balkans, and I can say very biased interference in the conflict during the Bosnia-Herzegovina war and military strikes on the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1999. But what we are focusing, of course, is this, as it is called, second opening from 2009 onwards, which was marked by a far more complex, sophisticated performance on several levels, with the use of all the forms of contemporary economic, public diplomacy, soft and smart power, and so on and so on. Yesterday we spoke quite a lot based on the book of Professor Muhasilović. And of course, part of the whole story that you could see is the flavor of this long-lasting conflict with Greece. In a way, you could see that there was basically part of the idea of some kind of geopolitical surrounding of the Greece due to this big conflict over Cyprus and many other ways, and that's the reason why Macedonia really played very important role within these geopolitical and strategic ideas of Professor Davutoglu. So hence, the relevant approach to this topic has to go beyond, that's my first important point, stereotypical value assessment in terms of whether the presence of Turkey is good or not, desirable or undesirable, and definitely this is the idea to skip over these value-based perceptions. And another point, especially after 2016, is that perception that Albanians, Bosniaks, and Turkish minorities, which were the basis of the first opening of the Turkey toward the Balkans, rejoice at the increased presence of the Turkish factor, while Christians oppose it in any way. I think that this is less and less relevant. At least we have to put it within the let me say, quoting Marx and so on, especially after the events in Turkey in 2016, which initiated an interesting turnaround in Turkish foreign policy and the elimination of the Davutoglu strategy, in which it was necessary for Turkey always to be in line with the support of Euro-Atlantic integration in this area. And which really is the fact that sparked very different perception of Turkey, especially in Berlin and France, which definitely didn't already were not very happy before with bigger Turkish influence in the region. But I think that also American administration at that time started to have a much more differentiated perception toward the Turkish role within the Balkans. After the Davutoglu, Erdogan pursues in a way more individualistic, pragmatistic, but far more sophisticated policy on several levels, which is often in conflict with the Western factor. And this is Professor Lamy, Blendi Lamy from Tirana already wrote about in 2007. So West, especially USA and UK, has previously shown significant sympathy for Turkey's return to the Balkans, started really to see that from different perspective. And as I already said, Germany and France, even before that, did have a lot of reservation about that. And very important point, we yesterday briefly touched upon that, but I'm very sure that our colleagues will speak more upon that, is this Fethullah Gulen's infrastructure as a parallel mode of Turkish presence in the region. So as we all know, there are universities, schools, NGOs, language schools, and so on, which played very important role in the region. I know, for example, in Skopje, one of the best schools, private schools, is owned and makes part of the Hizmet infrastructure. And as we all know, Turkey was very unhappy to see these institutions working after that. So just briefly to point on post-Davutoglu era, if I can say, I'm just briefly pointing to some of what I think the most important points, but I'm very sure that colleagues will individually deal with the separate countries and particular development within them. But what we see is actually that the key point is in a way that in fact that pretty big improvement of relationship of Turkey with Serbia and the Serbs generally, also Republika Srpska, for the first time it was, before that, it was unimaginable to see Milorad Dodik and President Erdogan in any relation, especially very friendly relation, which was in several occasions, and which is taking place at several levels, including security and especially economics. And Professor Fiesinger already spoke about that, those several very, how should I say, high-level visits of President Erdogan to Serbia, but also it was very interesting the level in which usually President Erdogan honors all the leaders from the Balkans, giving them very special status, including President of Serbia and Mr. Dodik, who is the leader of the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina or Republika Srpska. Then we have partial worsening of relationship with Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Pristina, Kosovo, we may say, because mostly on security level they refused to close Gulen's institution, unlike Serbia, which mostly closed all of them in the last 2 years. And we will speak probably more about the Hizmet infrastructure here, and which really makes one of the most interesting and the priorities for the Turkish foreign politics at the Balkans. Then we have continuation of the very complex relationship with Albanian factor generally that began even before 2017. So there are different positions on Macedonia, public petition of intellectuals in Pristina against Turkish investments and presence in Kosovo, conflicts about history interpretation, school books, and so on and so on. Then we have a slowing down of extremely intensive cooperation with Macedonia at all levels after the removal of Gruevski in 2017. And of course, new aggravation with Greece. In a way, several of issues, Professor Filis will speak more upon that. Refusal to extradite officers that ran away after the putsch attempt in 2016. Then gas exploration conflict around Cyprus, deployment of drone units in northern Cyprus, and so on and so on. So then we have, I think also, this is one of the hypotheses, smaller use of the Islamic factor and hence slightly decreased importance of the Diyanet than it was in previous period. Some of the explanation insists that actually we had more Wahhabis, Saudis, ISIS returnees as a challenge for general perception of Islam at the Balkans, so on. On the other hand, raising the instruments of public diplomacy through TIKA, Turkish Reconstruction Agency, and that's very interesting. 18% of their general means for the reconstruction that are distributed around the world goes for Balkans, which really displays the big interest for that. Then Yunus Emre institutes that are open, I think, more or less in all the Balkan countries. Anadolu agency, which is working from 2009, 2010, I think, scholarship for the students, and so on and so on. Also very important point, and I'm slowly coming to the end, de facto abandonment of European integration in Turkey, which I think is something which is not official yet, but definitely you see that both of sides are very much slowing down in a very process. And while it is still a formal framework for the Balkan countries, despite the US refusal to speed up the integration of the remaining non-members. And of course, we will have also the process of European integration as also very interesting part of the general relationship of the Balkan countries and Turkey. Of course, we have growth of economic investments and interest in infrastructure investments. And interestingly, already 10 years ago, there was speculation that investments in Serbia are far bigger than in Bosnia and Herzegovina or among Muslim communities, which de facto is not true. I have to, our colleague Goran Nikolić, who is dealing with statistics, really found very good recent data. And of course, the investments are not bigger in Serbia than they are in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or especially Albania, Macedonia, and Bulgaria. But it's very interesting that in Sarajevo, very often you hear a perception that, you know, Turks are investing much more in Serbia than in Bosnia, and they should be present more, and so on. There is perception that many of the investors are, that's also a very interesting issue, people close to the Fethullah movement, so it's also one of the hypotheses, so it also suits to Erdogan to move their capital out of the country. In general, and that's the point, it is relatively low level of investments when viewed in comparative frames. Of course, we have some increase after 2016. I already mentioned this, and these are the data. In 2013, we had something like $1 billion investments. In 2019, it is $2.187 billion of dollars, which really shows doubling of the presence of the investments. But on the other hand, when you compare that generally with the level of investments of Turkey's business in Holland, Germany, it's really very small amount and the percentage. And although Balkan makes now 5.2% in general Turkish global investments, which is double from 2014, still it is, as you see, relatively small in global perspective. Of course, we have increase in trade, but still it is 15 times less than with EU countries generally. And I'm finishing with a couple of issues that also might spark general interest. One is demography. In the overall geopolitical context, there is the huge disproportion in the number of inhabitants that Zdravković and Đurković pointed out 10 years ago, and this continues. We have in the meantime mass outflow of inhabitants from the Balkans, largely conditioned by economic migration, but also in a way by value changes due to new ideologies. And population is getting older here, while Turkey is going through, in a way, reaffirmation of the importance of faith, which by its nature has positive consequences for the birth rate. However, and these are new tendencies also, the downward trend begins also in Turkey, which is contributed by global popular culture and raising standards, especially in Anatolia. Fertility rate has fallen since 1971 from 5.53 to 2.04 in 2020. Still, what is very important is this disproportion in the age of the population. Median age in Turkey, average age is 31.5 years, which makes still very, very young population, while in majority of Balkan countries it is more than 40. Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, I think are somewhere about 43 generally, with fertility rate that is now around 1.5. Starting from that perspective, interesting question is to what extent this development limits the possibility of the Balkan states, Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, for any possible confrontation of the conflict type with Turkey in a way, especially in military terms. But why I'm speaking this? Because in the last 10 years we saw actually Turkey with this new self-esteem and increased economic power also inclined to project its military force outside its territory. So we have, of course, in Syria, in Iraq, and the recent events in Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh have shown high readiness to help its allies in all ways, including highly effective drones, the famous Bayraktar drones. And as we all know, Turkey played very important role in the recent war in Nagorno-Karabakh, in Artsakh, where due to big help, I think, of Turkey, Azerbaijan won within very short period. Turkey already participated as a military factor in the Balkans in '99, so its interesting question is whether it could be involved in some possible military conflict somewhere in this area as well. There is a very interesting article by Miša Đurković from Insittute for International Politics here in Belgrade, who was making some kind of comparison between Artsakh and Republika Srpska as a projection. It's very interesting based on the experience of Artsakh. And I'm finishing. Of course, the greatest success in public diplomacy was made by television series that definitely pushed out Latino telenovelas everywhere, including in Greece, actually. And that sparked also very big debate everywhere from Bulgaria, Greece, Serbia, and so on and so on. And what is interesting, Turkish soap operas even endangered the dominant American TV series in terms of dominating prime time. Of course, we all know that Pink, the most watched television, is in Serbia, is playing the soap operas all the time. Tourism, of course, has also contributed to raising of Turkey's importance and reputation among Balkan inhabitants, student stipends, medical tourism, and so on. Finally, it is important to look comparatively at the importance of the Balkans for Turkey in relation to all these other areas. In fact, it shows, I think, much smaller interest despite the general rhetoric. First, there's generally smaller amount of Muslims at the Balkans, which used and still are making the basis of the Turkish foreign politics trajectory. Of course, there are much bigger number of Muslim people in Middle East or, of course, Caucasian region. Second, more interest, I think we could see in participating in geopolitical game here than in competition for the area where the EU, Germany, dominates and where the great interests of Britain, United States, Russia, and increasingly China are also present. Finally, Austria, Germany, Netherlands are much more, I think, important for than the Balkans, both in terms of investments and in terms of the very big Turkish diaspora that is living there. And that was for me. Thank you very much for abusing that for more than 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Miša, and that was not much of an abuse. Next one is Professor Filis. We'll be talking on Greece and Turkish relations and on a topic that's of taking much interest here in Serbia as well. I think I'm looking forward to hear your presentation. Professor, the mic is yours.
Thank you, and thanks for the kind invitation. Let me, before I begin my short intervention, make a necessary correction. Since 2018, there is no state with the name Macedonia. There is a state called North Macedonia. So I would like to correct the previous speaker because we have to be...
Apologies.
Okay, well accepted. We have to be very precise in these issues, which are, of course, very sensitive, in a very sensitive area of the world, of course, as is the Balkans. So, the Balkan region, I will very shortly share a couple of thoughts regarding Turkey's involvement in the Balkan region, and then I will give you, I will share with you some issues concerning Greek-Turkish bilateral relations, and it is for me better if we leave some time for the Q&A session afterwards, because it is then that we're going to have more interaction. So the Balkan region has been central to Turkish activism, and essentially and morally can be considered as its soft underbelly, with Ankara attempting to form a space which will be an extension of its fantasies of reviving a portion of the Ottoman Empire. And of course, Turkey does not necessarily want to seize territory, but it wants to win the minds of those residing in the Balkans. And the Balkans are thus a model space, and all outgrowths of such in the sectors of culture, religion, education, and economy. The previous presentation was very analytical, very thorough. I have to congratulate Miša for that. Reinforce a trend of interaction that could culminate in support for Turkish actions and other regional configuration, lending special weight to this neo-Ottoman revisionism. And of course, in the initial phase, from 2004 to 2010, neo-Ottomanism focused on what it called Ottoman residuals, Muslim populations, minorities scattered throughout Balkan countries. But from 2010, neo-Ottomanism tried to create an Ottoman Commonwealth on the model of the British Commonwealth in states that had been part of the Ottoman Empire, putting Muslim brotherhoods in power. So this, of course, is not for the Balkan case. It's especially for the Arab uprisings. And this was the mentality, and this was the investment on behalf of Turkey. Fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately for us, it has failed in this idea of creating this Ottoman Commonwealth in Northern Africa and part of the Middle East. And this, of course, effort broke at 2 points. The first was in Egypt, when the Morsi regime fell and was replaced by al-Sisi, whom, of course, does not belong to the Muslim Brotherhood, and he took another direction. And this is one of the main reasons why we are facing these strained relations between Turkey and Egypt since 2013, 2014. And the second and larger problem, of course, was the situation in Syria and the way it evolved for Turkey's interests. Turkey is not necessarily functioning like other external powers as a spoiler state in the Balkans, but of course it takes advantage of rifts wherever it finds them, as it did in the case of the agreement between Greece and North Macedonia on the name issue, or in the case of the distance, well, actually before the agreement between Greece and North Macedonia, we'll come into that in a while, or in the case of the distance the European Union is maintaining from the Western Balkans. And of course, Turkey attempts to exploit the absence of a European perspective, and though lacking, of course, an alternative plan to offer to the states of the region, it invests in the disappointment felt at rejection by the European Union. It was already said, but let me just put this into more detail. Of course, we have the reopening of mosques, constant cultural interaction. This is what characterizes Turkey's involvement, the hegemonic outlook that has caused confrontation. For example, and it was referred in general terms from the previous speaker, in the case of Kosovo, Turkey demanded a couple of years ago that school books be changed because they did not correctly portray the Ottoman Empire, and there was a kind of a quarrel with authorities there. As you already know, Turkey, despite being a NATO member, was also opposed to the Prespa agreement because before the agreement it was able to fuel anti-Greek sentiment in North Macedonia by blaming the country's problems on Greece. The Turkish narrative, which was bought by North Macedonia leaders like the extremist Mr. Gruevski, was that Athens was undermining the stability and prosperity of North Macedonia by blocking the country's membership in NATO and the EU. And of course, we also had, at least based on what Turkey's officials have admitted, a direct intervention in the case of the Greek-Albania agreement, delimiting exclusive economic zone in 2010, which was then cancelled by Albania's constitutional court, invoking similar claims to that of Turkey in the Aegean. And as I said, there are numerous Turkish officials celebrated the development, openly saying that their country influenced the outcome of the decision of Albania's constitutional court. In the case of Greek-Turkish relations, of course, you do know what is our approach and how we deal with Turkish irredentism with regard to the Aegean especially, but also the Eastern Mediterranean. Of course, you do know that we have, or at least up until a couple of weeks ago, we were confronting constant threats, a constant presence in the region in the form of overflights, violations of airspace, air and naval exercises. We had, of course, the seismic survey vessels, floating drill platforms in the framework of an energy program Turkey has launched. In all these ways, Turkey tries to force Greece to come to the negotiating table, but on Turkish terms. It uses this coercive diplomacy, and it creates gray areas through its power, by projecting its power, and it is trying to gradually wear down and strain the Greek side to make us, in future negotiations, more open to Turkish sensitivities, and at the same time, it is attempting to keep us from exercising our sovereign rights in areas of Turkish interest, in the hope of weakening these rights over time. And Turkey also wants to make everyone aware that it is a dominant power in the wider region, and that no one can or should question that. In the case of Greece, 2 or 3 comments on my behalf. First, we do not want to marginalize or isolate Turkey from regional affairs. This goes especially to the Eastern Mediterranean, but of course to the Balkans to an extent. What we want instead is to have a normal big neighbor which accepts common rules of the game, which accepts international law as the basis of negotiations, and of course does not have any kind of revisionist goals against Greece. We want to have a direct dialogue with Turkey. Nowadays, let me clarify that there is no dialogue between the two states. We have the exploratory talks. Exploratory talks between Greece and Turkey is a pro-dialogue stage where the two sides share their thoughts on how the agenda of the dialogue can be agreed and whether it can be agreed, and nothing more than that. So exploratory talks, which researched in January 2021, are not a dialogue. They are a step before dialogue. What we want from Turkey is a direct dialogue with a specified agenda, which of course cannot be anything more than delimiting exclusive economic zone and exclusive economic zone and continental shelf in the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean. Turkey wants to broaden the agenda, to enrich the agenda, to put it this way, by including issues like the delimitarization of Greek islands or like gray zones. I can guarantee that there is no Greek government and there will be no Greek government in the future which will accept such an agenda. There is no Greek government that can accept discussing with Turkey whether Greek islands belong to Greece. There is no Greek government that is going to discuss with Turkey about our national defense. And as you know, of course, national security and defense prevails even national or international, agreements or treaties. Another issue is that, as you may know or you may not know, Turkey has put into effect since June 1995 a casus belli against Greece in case Greece expands its territorial waters in the Aegean to 12 nautical miles. As you probably also may know, all states which have signed the agreement of the law of the sea of 1982 have expanded their territorial waters to 12 nautical miles with 3 exceptions, one of them being Greece. So another issue that has to be solved before we enter into this dialogue with Turkey in serious terms is for Turkey to, of course, remove this casus belli against Greece. And the third issue is whether we decide that our dialogue, provided that we will have such, that we will take that big step in, getting from exploratory talks to a direct dialogue, will have international law and especially the law of the sea as the basis of it, of the dialogue. Otherwise, what is Turkey's preference is instead to speak on political terms. Turkey feels, and actually is, more powerful than Greece, and hopes that if we speak on political terms, it will be easier for it to impose its will on Greece, or at least impose the terms of the dialogue on Greece. The last issue I would like to bring to your attention, of course, we can discuss about Cyprus, we can discuss about Libya, we can discuss about, of course, the Balkans, but what is of great concern to us is the fact that Turkey seems to be retreating both from the EU and from any sense of democracy that it might have had in the past. What do I mean by that? We all know what is going on internally in in Turkey, with, of course, the way the system functions, especially after the unsuccessful coup and the changes which Mr. Erdogan imposed in Turkish constitution. We see that Turkey is using a very harsh rhetoric against the EU, against the US, of course, against France and other member states. It is only Germany which has still retained its relations with Turkey in a functional mode. But of course, we are deeply concerned by the fact that if we look into Turkey's actions only for the last 1.5 years, we should certainly be on alert. Since November 2019, Turkey signed an MOU with Libya, delimiting their exclusive economic zone, which of course is against any sense, any dimension of international law and the law of the sea. Afterwards, Turkey started violating Cyprus's exclusive economic zone, which of course had begun since 2014, but since 2019, Turkey violates Cyprus's exclusive economic zone with drillings, which is an even more dire violation of Cyprus's exclusive economic zone. Turkey, as you know, is involved in Syria, in Libya, with mercenaries, is involved in Nagorno-Karabakh, and of course, in August 2020, Turkey conducted seismic surveys in disputed areas with Greece in the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean for almost 3 months. So the last concern on our behalf is that some of our European friends and of course other member states do not have the same approach as we do with regard to Turkey. And this, of course, especially goes for Germany, because we do not expect Latvia, Lithuania, or Poland to be that sensitive, as we are not that sensitive to their concerns with regard to Russia. It has to do with the geographical proximity. We have to be frank on that. But still, Germany, which leads the European Union together with France, should change its approach with regard to Turkey and realize that the appeasement policy on Ankara has failed, and that we need another mix of policy with stick and carrot towards Turkey to make sure that Turkey will at last follow the path of normality, because this is to our interest. It is not to Greece's interest, and let me conclude with that, to see Turkey further alienating itself from the West. It is not to our interest to see the Turkish economy collapsing. It is not to our interest to see political instability in Turkey. On the contrary, we want a stable, as much democratic as possible Turkey, a prosperous Turkey on our side. That's it from me. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Professor Filis, for this both wide and deep explanation of Greece's views on the Turkish position and dynamics in the region. Our next speaker is Mr. Karagyozov, our colleague from Bulgaria, from Insittute for Balkan Studies. He'll speak about Bulgarian and Turkish relations. So, Mr. Karagyozov, please, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me, dear colleagues? Okay. I want, first of all, to thank the Institute for European Studies and the Hanns Seidel Stiftung for organizing this event, this panel. I was very glad to see so many people from Belgrade visiting my academia edu profile, so I have to update it. As Mr. Đurković already mentioned, there are so many reasons for close cooperation between Turkey and the Balkans, like economical, geostrategic, historical, cultural, and other components. So I would like to make my intervention in to use two approaches. The first one defining maybe three stages of Bulgarian-Turkish relations, and then also the sectoral approach. I want to give you some background context about Bulgarian-Turkish relations. You know, after the beginning of the transition to democracy in Bulgaria, what was the situation? The political and security vacuum after the fall of the Iron Curtain. Also, the fragmentation of Yugoslavia undermined the regional stability. That is why improving relations between Bulgaria and Turkey was a must for both sides. For Bulgaria, it has adopted European orientation in its foreign policy, pragmatism, multilateralism, and equidistance, meaning no participation in regional conflicts. For Turkey, good relations with Bulgaria were important because of the trace, the strategic position of Istanbul, and also, you know, the ties, demographic, the presence of Turkish minority in Bulgaria, and in order to contain the spillover from the other conflicts in the Balkan region. Well, that is why I can say that this first period was re-establishing the relations after the Cold War. And actually, at that time in Bulgaria, it was kind of we had two polar model, political model, and it was like a pendulum. I mean, you have basically the former Communist Party, the Socialist Bulgarian Socialist Party, and the pro-democratic, pro-Western forces, and this two-polar, bipolar political model was not a favorable opportunity structure for foreign powers to intervene in the Bulgarian internal politics. With the beginning of the new century, this bipolar political model had collapsed. And actually, Bulgaria is quite a unique country because our former king, our former Tsar, came to Bulgaria. And he became a prime minister. This was the beginning of the second stage in Bulgarian-Turkish relations, because at that time, the internal political role of the movement for rights and freedoms, which is the political party, which is defending the rights and freedoms of mostly Turkish constituency or grassroots base in Bulgaria. The role of that party gradually expanded. So they became kind of kingmakers in Bulgarian parliament. Also, with the process of migration, you know, many Bulgarian citizens went abroad in European and other countries to provide for them and for their families. The opportunities for Bulgarians abroad to vote had been expanded, and that was another opportunity for migrants born in Bulgaria from Turkish origin, which are living currently in Turkey, to vote and to take part in the Bulgarian politics. In 2009, we entered at the third stage, which is very much stage of the Bulgarian internal developments. But those are very much similar and parallel to some developments in Turkish internal political field as well. What I mean, for example, during the first decade, with what I mentioned, like 90s, the situation in Turkey was not very stable because of the economic crisis, because in 1994, in 2000, because of the internal conflicts, the coalition governments. So Turkey was not very stable as well, and it was not very easy for Turkey to project power outside of its borders. During the second decade mentioned above, the power capacities of Turkey increased, and in 2009 we entered in another stage. In my view, I don't know. Maybe in Yugoslavia you had that term, but in Bulgaria we had it the mature socialism. I can say in Turkey at that time we had matured Erdoganism. So that was the second term, the second mandate of AKP. But since 2009 in Bulgaria, the center of the right of the center party, GERB, and its leader, Mr. Bojko Borisov, they became the dominant political force in Bulgarian context. So it was very easy because Mr. Borisov had governed Bulgaria for 12 years. So it was easier for the Turkish president Tayyip Erdogan to forge a good ties with his fellow strongman in Bulgaria, Bojko Borisov. So and I think the peak of that process was in 2019 when Bulgaria took the presidency of the European Council. So at the beginning of that year, it was a grandiose ceremony. A Bulgarian iron church, the restoration of the Bulgarian church in Istanbul, was finished, and it became operational again. It's a historical and a very beautiful church. But that was also a political sign. And then 2 months later, in March, Bulgaria organized summit between EU leaders and the Turkish president in the Bulgarian coastal city of Varna. So I think that was the zenith, to put it that way, of this bilateral relations. If we have to look at the sectoral approaches, we will see economy, investments, transportation ties, tourism, soft power, so on and so forth. So let me briefly mention a couple of words about all these fields, and then I will leave the floor for questions and answers. So in the field of economy, we have approximately $4.5 billion US dollar trade over annually between Bulgaria and Turkey. In the field of investments, and we have a free trade agreement, of course. In the field of investments, there is dominance of the Turkish investments in Bulgaria. There are many Turkish firms operating in companies investing their money in Bulgaria because it's kind of a gate to Europe. And if you have a company or company registered in Bulgaria, you can operate on the European market as well. So there are a couple of very big investments in Bulgaria made by Turkish companies. For example, Şişecam, which is, as you can imagine, a glass factory, Alcomet, which is in metals, Sarten, Aktaş, Tekvaş, and others. Most of them they're in the spare parts automobile sector, also metals and other electrical cables and so on and so forth. But interestingly enough, most of these investments are concentrated in Turkish-speaking regions in Bulgaria. It's not a conspiracy, but when you're from Turkey, you're searching for people able to speak and to communicate in Turkish. What about ties in tourism? many Bulgarians, approximately 2 million Bulgarians are visiting Turkey every year. So Bulgaria is among the top 5 sources of tourists coming to Turkey. Other countries are like Germany, UK, Russia, but you see the size of these countries, because Germany is 80 million and Russia is 150 million. So Bulgaria is among top 5 countries, and also from all these aspects are not very problematic, but from Bulgarian point of view, the Turkish soft power and its implications for Bulgaria are a bit disturbing for some parts of the society. What I mean, TIKA activities in Bulgaria, although TIKA do not have an office here, they're present via different projects or restoration sites they're working on or subsidizing. Also, the presence of Diyanet is very much official. It's based on bilateral agreement, and also many Bulgarian Turks are included in the activities, in the scope of activities of YTB, which is the presidency for Turks abroad and kinship communities. So those are the activities, the scholarships, religious education, which are seen as particularly problematic for some segments of the Bulgarian society. And I want to finish on a positive note. For example, with transportation, because Bulgaria is the land bridge between Turkey and Europe. So 70 to 80,000 trucks per month are crossing Bulgaria in order to reach Western Europe. So this is creating mutual interdependency. And in my view, that's the main explanation why during the refugee crisis last year, the flow of the refugees and migrants was directed to the Greek border, but not to the Bulgarian border, because sending refugees or refugee flow to the Bulgarian border would mean a blockage in the trade between Europe and Turkey. So those are very. Turkey is the biggest neighbor of Bulgaria, very important trading partner, political partner. So we can discuss in a more details the political or other aspects of our relations. I think I'm exhausting my 15 minutes, so I would stop here and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Marian Karagyozov, for your contribution here. I'm sure we'll be having some questions on the Bulgarian-Turkish relations. We turn to Dr. Krisafi from Tirana. The mic is yours, and we'll be hearing about Albanian-Turkish relations.
Thank you, Milan. Am I heard or not?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. As I want to start with what Miša said in the beginning about the second opening of Davutoglu in Sarajevo in 2009. Maybe for the region, it was, let's say, a change, what Davutoglu's speech in Sarajevo and what the Turkish foreign policy was afterwards in the Balkans. But in the case of Albania, I think I see let's say, a trajectory, something constant in the last 30 years. So in a certain way, Albania's relations with Turkey is not related directly to neo-Ottomanism or to Davutoglu or to Erdogan or to Turkey's, let's say, desire to be an important player in the Balkans. Albania's relationships, let's say, strong relationship with Turkey has started since the beginning of the 90s. And for Albania, it was, let's say, it was a very pragmatic relation. It was mostly for security reasons, economic reasons also. Turkey was one of the first countries, which I think maybe the first one, which economically helped Albania in 1992, just after the fall of the communist regime. Also, it was for geopolitical reasons. Albania at that time, in the beginning, it was, let's say, between Yugoslavia in the north with all its troubles, internal wars, and with Greece in the south, which relations with Greece has started to change compared with what they were during the Cold War. So for Albania, it was since the beginning. Turkey was important since the beginning. It was nothing related to an Ottomanism or who is in power in Turkey. Now, what I want to make the point, it's what has changed in the last years. For example, during the second opening in 2009, in Albania at the time, it was the government of Prime Minister Berisha, and until 2013. Even though it was this, let's say, this new approach to Turkish foreign policy with Davutoglu and later with Erdogan, relations with Albania at the time didn't change. But what really changed was after Albania's change of government in 2013, when Prime Minister Rama came to power, Socialist Party came to power. This is, let's say, the crux of the relationship between Albania and Turkey. It was not what changed from Turkey's point of view, it was what changed from Albania's point of view. Now, even Rama, let's say, raised the relation with Turkey in completely another level. Albania, as I said, has continuously in the last 30 years have very good, strong relations with Turkey, but Rama in a certain way wanted to make them more deeper, more important. In a certain way, I can say, especially in the last 5 years, Turkey has transformed itself in Albania in some kind of last resort, in a certain way, when everything else doesn't work in a certain way, when plan A, B, or the other plans doesn't work, in the end there is Turkey. This is what has Rama let's say, has created in Albania's foreign policy. For example, this has happened with the November earthquake in Albania in 2019. The same thing happened with the vaccines now. Albania, in a certain way, in the beginning was expecting to receive vaccines from the Western countries, from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and the other vaccines. And when Rama was asked about Russian or Chinese vaccines, he said, no, we are waiting for the Western ones. But in a certain way, as I said, when everything else doesn't work, as in this case with the vaccines, Albania didn't get what was demanded from the Western vaccines. It was Turkey who came to help with Chinese vaccines, and in a certain way, it was a very big success for Albania because it solved the problem it had. The same thing is with other issues, as the November earthquake in 2019. Of course, there was big help from a lot of countries, but it was Turkey who came, let's say, in Albania and started directly to build new houses and to give, let's say, concrete help. This is what I want to stress: the relation between Albania and Turkey. In a certain way, in the last years, we see that Turkey is more, let's say, more practical in what is giving to Albania. One such case is with a new hospital in Fier in South Albania. It was promised by Erdogan in a meeting with Rama 3 months or 4 months before the elections of April 25 in Albania. And at the meeting, Turkish president said that we are going to build this hospital in Albania in 2 months. So you're going to have the hospital ready before the elections. And this was, let's say, a completely different approach to things being done in practice in Albania compared with what the European Union is doing. I think this was the message given to Albanians from Turkish side and maybe even from Albanian side, that while the European Union needs a lot of time, a lot of months, a lot of procedures, a lot of bureaucracy to make something happen practical, Turkey does it in 2 months. They can build the hospital, and they built it in hospital in Fier in just 2 months. And it was, let's say, from the PR perspective from Turkey, it was a big success. If you talk with Albanians, common Albanians in the streets, and they said that Turkey did it. They did it very fast and very quick and with very good quality, while the European Union is not doing it. This is the perception. And I think that This is what, in a certain way, Erdogan and Turkey wants to achieve in Albania, because let's say there is no real political influence. Only one country has real political influence in Albania, and that is the United States. It can change things in Albania in the political sphere. Turkey doesn't do this because it doesn't have this kind of influence. But what it has this kind of doing things approach, very practical approach compared with, let's say, with the European Union. It's in a certain way, it is a PR war, let's say, between Turkey and the European Union. We can do this thing, you can do that thing. On the other hand, I think, for example, the level of relations, as I said, has increased considerably, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, with a lot of agreements. Albania, for example, all the restoration of all Islamic cultural or religious buildings in Albania has become a monopoly of TIKA. It was not like this 5 years ago. Other donors came to Albania, they reconstructed mosques or built new mosques. For example, in the beginning of 2000s or during the 90s, it was Saudi Arabia, for example, Qatar, they built a lot of mosques in Albania. This doesn't happen anymore. It has become, let's say, in a way, monopoly of Turkey, especially monopoly of TIKA. Another level is that not just the restoration of cultural buildings, just 2 or 3 months ago, there was a new agreement between Albania and Turkey that TIKA is going to help reconstruct 2 Albanian cities, the old part of the cities, in Gjirokastra and Berat, which has a strong Ottoman tradition. So I said TIKA has become a monopoly. It has removed all the other competition in this regard. The same thing is with education. In the 90s, at the beginning of 2000s, the Turkish presence in the education system in Albania, in private education system, was important, with colleges, with high schools, kindergartens, even for children, and it was they were in a certain way managed, let's say, by Fethullah Gulen movement. What Albania hasn't done much, let's say, about FETÖ concretely, but Turkey has moved a lot. How? It has become the competitor of Fethullah Gulen schools in Albania. It has bought new schools, it has opened universities, kindergartens, high schools everywhere. So it has, let's say, it has removed FETÖ from Albanian education system by competing with it, giving something much better, giving something much cheaper for Albanian students. So in a certain way, Albania didn't have to do much to remove FETÖ. Turkey has done it itself in this way. So this, I think, is what Rama is doing. Is from Rama's perspective, this is very pragmatic in a certain way. I don't think he sees Turkey as an alternative. Turkey is not an alternative to European Union, Albania. Even from what the polls that the Albanian Institute for International Studies has conducted in the last years, the majority of Albanians, over 85, 86, 90%, they want to be part of the European Union. Turkey is not an alternative. Russia is not an alternative. China is not an alternative. So even from Rama's point of view, this is very, very clear. Turkey is not an alternative, but he is very pragmatic in what he is seeking. As much as is possible, he wants to profit everywhere, let's say in the economy, in the security, in the geopolitical point of view. For example, a few months ago, there was another agreement between Albania and Turkey for a possible production of drones in Albania, Turkish drones in Albania. So this is a whole new level of relations with Turkey. I want to make a small correction to what my Greek colleague, Professor Filis, said about the 2009 maritime agreement between Albania and Greece. I don't think it was Turkey's influence to annul the agreement. Of course, it was in the interest of Turkey to annul it, but it was not, let's say, their influence, because in Albania, the contradiction and the debate against the agreement began very, very soon, almost after the signing of it. And they began with professors, with experts, which had, let's say, no relation at all with Turkey. And they built a very good and very file for the Constitutional Court. And even in my view, the decision was the correct one. And let's say in the future there is going to be a better maritime agreement with Greece. So let's give Turkey due to what it has, not what it hasn't. But this is what I want to say for Albania, especially in the last 5 years. I want to conclude with this because maybe later I want to receive any questions or comments. In the last 5 years, especially with Rama's government, has changed a lot in Albania-Turkish relations. They have deepened the relations. They have got it to another level. Metaphorically, I want to say it like this: it's not only Turkey that wants to come to Albania. In a certain way, Albania is welcoming Turkey to come. So it's completely different from the other parts of the region. And I saw in Misha's first presentation, he mentioned worsening of relations between Albania and Turkey. I don't think this is correct. At the moment when we are talking, Albanian Turkish relations are the best they have ever been in the last 30 years, and I don't see any change in the future. So, thank you. This is all I had. So I'm waiting for questions later and comments.
Okay, thank you, Ledion, for the nice small lecture there. We have some time for several questions. I've put on the chat my own questions, but I'll be asking them last if anyone else wants to engage. Anyone else in the hall? Miša, is anyone raising hand to ask the question?
We have at chat maybe some.
I put my questions in the chat, so if no one else is asking the questions, I'll be putting mine to each of the panelists there.
I also have to invite the colleagues who are at Zoom and presenters also, so please be free. If we don't have anyone here, Milan, please you start.
Okay, I'll start with to Professor Filis. How do you assess the recent role of USA in the Greek-Turkish relations? There's a strong uptake in Greek-US relations, bilateral ties, and specifically in the security and defense sector. There has been an agreement lasting a few years now. I think the new one is up for renegotiation. It's going to expand. American aircraft and drones have expanded their role in Greek air bases. They've been operating across Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa. We know that. And on the other side, at least since the Turkish unsuccessful coup in 2016 and possibly prior to that, there's been a cooling down, sort of security partnership between the U.S. and Turkey. And can you just briefly, specify what's the American role there for the Greek-Turkish relations?
Indeed, and thank you for the excellent question. Let me first clarify that what I said about Turkey's involvement in Albania's constitutional court's decision on the delimitation of exclusive economic zone between Albania and Greece, and I'm referring to Mr. Krisafi, is that the Turks and there are Turkish officials, namely Admiral Yayıncı and other politicians, whom claim that it was due to Turkey's direct intervention that this decision was taken. I didn't say that the decision was taken because of that. I just referred to the fact that the Turkish officials were congratulating themselves for the development. Maybe it was an over-exaggeration. Maybe there is a slight, at least, a piece of truth in that assessment. So, with regard to the U.S., well, it is true that, as I said, when I concluded my prologue, we do not expect the European Union to make any difference, any serious difference with regard to Turkey, although because of the problems that the Turkish economy is facing nowadays and the impact that these problems have on Mr. Erdogan's political power and the fact that he is not that powerful, at least based on polls, we do not see any real desire on behalf of the Europeans, especially on behalf of Germans, to use that instrument vis-à-vis Turkey. So it is true that the US, which of course is still the most influential player in the region, although it's not the only one anymore, if it ever was the only one. So we count on US's not support, because we do know that Turkey is very, very important for the US. We do know that Turkey has different characteristics with regard to Greece. We cannot fill in the shoes of Turkey, by no means. We are two totally different countries. And we do know that if Turkey decides to further divert itself from the West, then, which is of course an undesirable development, both for us and for the West, then in that case, the Americans will look for alternatives, but Greece cannot do it on its own. They need an axis, or maybe a new synergy like the one between Greece, Egypt, Israel, Cyprus, and other countries involved. And let me here stress that in my mind, for Greece, the Balkan region, the Southeastern European territory, is our natural, is where our natural allies, or our space, our priorities should focus instead of the Eastern Mediterranean. But we have turned our attention in the Eastern Mediterranean for the reasons I described before. So we do not expect the Americans to get involved in such way so to prevent Turkey from, getting into any difficult situation with Greece, but we do expect the Americans to send a crystal clear message to Turkey that any destabilizing attempts on its behalf will not be accepted by Washington. It is to all countries, to all regional players, as well as outside players, when we refer to the West at least, interest to see the situation between Greece and Turkey stabilizing, but not only between Greece and Turkey, overall. And it is true that Turkey, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, needs to adopt a more conciliatory approach, not only vis-à-vis Greece, but also vis-à-vis Egypt, vis-à-vis Israel, so that things are going to stabilize, not only in terms of rhetoric, but also in practice. And last but not least, Mr. Biden seems determined, at least for now. Again, he does not want to lose Turkey during his tenure, that's for sure. The same goes for every American president and foreign minister, but he seems determined enough to have a Turkey, or to deal with a Turkey that is going to be more predictable and especially more trustworthy as a partner within NATO and as a regional player. So to make a long story short, we all need a more credible Turkey, because it is very evident that now there is a great distrust and concern over Turkey and its actions. And it's not only Mr. Erdogan, it's the Turkish system which needs some repair, to put it this way. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Filis. The question is for Mr. Karagyozov. Is Bulgaria satisfied how its Turkish border is managed in the context of Frontex involvement in all the migration crises that has subsided the last 2 years, maybe? And does the fact that Bulgaria is on the outer border of the EU and towards Turkey, in this sense, play a role in its views on the idea of Turkish accession to the EU? That is a long shot, of course, the accession, but I've heard from Bulgarian diplomats here, from even Croatian diplomats, one of the reasons why they support Serbia's accession to the EU is that they don't want to have an outer border of the EU, and they don't want to be responsible for the management of the migration crisis, so to speak. So they kind of want the problem to go away. So does it play a role in Bulgaria's thinking about possible Turkish accession to the EU, however long shot that chance is?
I may add, one more thing for Mr. Karagyozov, since he's about to respond. Just briefly, if I can pose the question. Could you please explain us a little bit more position of Mr. Dogan and, let me say, political representatives of the Turkish population in Bulgaria in the last 10 years, especially when you have, in a way, very fragmented or pluralistic political internal situation in which 9-10% of votes could be really decisive. And in that sense, does he have more coordination, let me say, with Sofia or with Ankara, or using this position maybe for improving the position of Turkish themselves within the Bulgaria, and also this kind of bilateral communication with Ankara? Thank you very much.
I noticed that one of our respected colleagues from Turkey, Mr. Mehmet Uğurekinci, is also raising hand to collect questions or to answer now. It's up to the.
Mr. Uğurekinci, please ask the question, sure.
Sure, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for this interesting event. I'm following it from Ankara, and I have been also researching on Turkey-Balkans relations for some years. I have a quick question to Professor Filis. He explained very well the concerns of Greece regarding Turkish foreign policy and domestic developments. I would like to ask him to comment more about Turkey's policy and how it is viewed, policy towards Balkans and how it is viewed in Greece, because somewhere in his talk, he mentioned that Turkey is not like some other external actors, because Turkey is not acting like a spoiler, but Turkey is benefiting certain gaps in the region. And also somewhere else in his talk, he mentioned that Turkey has a hegemonic outlook. So how does it play? I mean, being hegemonic and at the same time not being a spoiler. So if you could just elucidate that would be really interesting. Thank you.
Okay, let's give Professor Filis answer so we can wrap up Greece, and then we can move on to Bulgaria. Marian, is that okay? Okay, great.
Thanks for the question. Frankly, I don't think that these two issues or these two things are mutually exclusive. I mean, I feel that Russia sometimes acts as a spoiler state in the Balkans. China is trying to use its economic power as a tool to enhance its position in the Balkans. Turkey is following another path which has been very, very thoroughly described by all the previous speakers, starting from Miša. In our reading of the situation, Turkey does feel hegemonical towards the Balkans, as it does feel towards the Eastern Mediterranean, in the sense that it feels that the rest of regional powers should take into very serious consideration what Turkey, the Turkish interests or the Turkish sensitivities. This is why I refer to an example in the case of Kosovo. And of course, there are other examples indicating that Turkey, sorry for that, other examples indicating that, that Turkey is approaching the Balkans in a hegemonical way as a part of the previous Ottoman Empire and as states that need to kind of accommodate to Turkey's interests and to Turkish positions. But I don't think that Turkey is doing that in a way like Russia is doing it, or in another way like China is doing it. And besides, Turkey, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, cannot be regarded as an external power with regard to the Balkans. It is, by extension, a Balkan state itself. It belongs to the Southeastern European territory. Thanks.
Okay. Shall I go?
Yes, Marian, please.
Thank you,
Professor Filis.
Thank you, colleagues. Well, let me start the answering your question with the joke. They asked a migrant or refugee, where do you want to go, to heaven or to hell? And he said, to Germany. So actually, Bulgaria is a transit country. For the migrants and refugees, Bulgaria was never a final destination, and we are not a member of the Schengen zone. That is why currently there is no any refugee or migration pressure on the border, Bulgarian-Turkish border, I mean. Bulgaria felt the heat in 2015, 2016, but now currently we have a very, very stable and I can say there are broader. We don't have any problems there. I briefly mentioned this interdependence in commercial, trading, and other terms between Bulgaria and Turkey, which is part of the explanation. And also, Bulgaria is constantly supporting Turkey's EU bid. In fact, in the past, Turkey supported Bulgarian ambitions to join EU and NATO. So now Bulgarian government is kind of returning the favor, and we are supporting that's the official and the constant position of the Bulgarian government to fully support Turkey EU accession appetite. So I think being border is just one part of the calculation. In general, the whole equation is larger. It is including geostrategic, political, also commercial and economical considerations. In regards to movement for rights and freedoms, Mr. Đurković is absolutely right, because 30 or 40 deputies out of 240 in a fragmented parliament, that means a lot. That's a significant political power, and that is why in the recent years the weight of MRF, the movements for rights and freedoms, increased. Actually, the question about whether Sofia or Ankara, that's $1 million question. Let me be frank. From a point of view of researcher, MRF is a very difficult party to be researched, because they're a bit capsulated. So it's not a very easy object for any research. But I can say the relations with Ankara are ambiguous at best, because there are different phases. In some stages, the relations between the movement and Ankara were good. Currently, they are good, but in the past, we know that there was a unofficial ban of meetings of Mr. Ahmed Doğan, the former leader of this party and this movement, with Turkish officials. They preferred other Bulgarian political actors. They considered other Bulgarian political actors will serve their interests better. But from also another personal observation, I think MRF was doing very fine. The strategy of the movement was wise because they always prefer to position themselves as a Bulgarian liberal political party defending rights and freedoms, not as a tool of Ankara. So it's completely different from a viewpoint of legitimacy in the Bulgarian political system, and about the legitimacy and the acceptance of the wider Bulgarian public about the party. So it was smarter that they preferred to be a Bulgarian party, maybe claiming some unpopular thesis defending rights and freedoms of minorities, but not being perceived as a proxy like other parties in the Middle East or elsewhere. So that's my short answer.
Okay, thank you. I had a question to Ledion. I think you see it on
yes,
chat.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, what was the reception of the Nagorno-Karabakh war from last year in terms of Turkey's support to Azerbaijan, and especially in terms of the efficacy of armed Bayraktar drones? Miša mentioned them earlier, and you mentioned that briefly. I think there has been some reception in Serbia as well on the nature of the war in military terms and the political repercussions on the role of and the inability of international community to bring that to a quick halt, so to speak. So
yes.
What's the reception in Tirana on that?
Look, in Albania, the Nagorno-Karabakh war and Nagorno-Karabakh issue in general is, let's say, very little known, and there is very little interest about it. And from the Albanian government, as far as I can remember, there was no declarations apart from the parties to cease fire and negotiate. There was no other declaration. So in a certain way, let's say Turkish support for Azerbaijan was nothing new, but it didn't make, let's say, any impression, or it was accepted in any certain way. But I think that maybe in a deeper level, the Bayraktar drones must have impressed someone in the Albanian government, because Albania now is trying to, let's say, cooperate with Turkey, maybe buy drones, maybe build drones along with Turkey in Albania. So this impression could have been, but it's just supposition in a certain way, because on a public level, it was news like every other news from the world. There was nothing special about Nagorno-Karabakh or about Turkey's support for Azerbaijan.
Miša, is there anyone else in the room that would like to ask a question? Or we can go for a short break.
Maybe someone? No. Okay. So since we are also running late a bit, thank you very much, Milan, for moderating and leading this. And I really do want heartily to express great gratitude to all the panelists, our colleagues from abroad, and really to say that I hope that maybe next year we could organize something to have you all in Belgrade, hopefully. And also I'm happy that we have a lot of academics and scholars from Turkey following all of this, and I also want to ask them to join in the discussion afterwards and so on. So I propose that we go for a 5 minutes slow break, and after that we immediately continue with the second session. Thank you very much. See you within 5 minutes. Okay. Dear friends, colleagues, and visitors of the conference, I'm glad that I can see you again still, and we are continuing with the second panel. We have several panelists, mostly at this session from the former Yugoslav republics. Actually, we put that to go from west to the east. That's how we concentrated our panelists, first to have people from these neighborhood countries, and now we are having former republics. And we will have 4 presentation, actually 5, since we have the last one, actually 2 combined. But first with us is Professor Dr. Zhidas Daskalovski, University of Kliment Ohridski, Faculty of Security, who is our colleague who already participated at one of our conference 3 years ago, and he will now give the presentation. He's from Skopje, of course, and give presentation on relationship of Turkey. And I have to be precise, so Professor Filis not correct me again. I have to stick with the internationally recognized name, North Macedonia and Turkey. Zhidas, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miša. Thank you to the Hanns Seidel Foundation and to the Institute for European Studies. I will now try to share my presentation. Just a second. Okay. I hope you can see it. I don't know if you see it or not. Well, even if you don't see it, I can read it on my own. So it's okay.
Don't worry, everything is okay. Yeah. Just go on.
So I have titled my presentation as this Turkey Macedonia relations steady and strong. It is a fact that Turkey has a specific view on Macedonia, and this view can be best summarized by the words of the president of the Turkish Grand Assembly when he was visiting Bitola in 2008. What he said was this: primary school pupils in Turkey first study about the capital city of Ankara, then they study about Istanbul, which is obviously the largest and, of course, most important city, and then they study about Bitola, that's in Macedonian, and Monastir in Turkish. They study about Bitola as the 3rd most important city in the Turkish history. This is the city where Kemal Atatürk went to school. This is the area where his father was born, and therefore it is very important for Turkey. So there is this romantic vision on the country based basically on the Ottoman history. Now, as far as official relations are concerned, Turkey is, of course, one among the first countries to recognize the Republic of Macedonia. It has given strong support to all the governments we have had so far since independence in the attempts to get Macedonia become a member of NATO. This is a strategic support of Turkey, of course, in some way balancing the Greek objections to the name of our country. Now, there have been over 200 bilateral meetings between government officials from Ankara and Skopje, mostly in Turkey, some in Macedonia, and some at international events. The countries have trade agreement, they have strategic cooperation agreement, they have military cooperation agreements. There have been a lot of trainings, military trainings of army officials from Macedonia in Turkey. There has been a stream of donations, military aid of equipment and financial aid to the army of Macedonia. It is very interesting that out of 85 municipalities we have, 33 have established some kind of sisterly relations with Turkish municipalities. And there has been a lot of exchange in the fields of culture, education, and trainings. So as far as the official relations are concerned, they are very good, and they have been steady and strong during the years. Now, of course, there are different channels which Turkey uses to influence and project soft power on Macedonia. One of these channels are the agencies which are also operating in other countries in the former Yugoslavia and in the Western Balkans. And here we talk about TIKA and the Diyanet. So TIKA has opened an office in Macedonia since 2005 and has made over 900 projects in the sectors of education, healthcare, infrastructure, and mostly cultural heritage preservation. Here we're talking about Ottoman heritage, mostly preservation of the Ottoman heritage. On the other hand, the Directorate of Religious Affairs, this Diyanet, has worked on reparation of religious buildings, mosques, tekkes, how they're called, turbans, and so on. It has, on the other side, donated medical equipment, food, and clothes, typically during these times of fasting, when the Muslims fast, and there are these so-called iftar dinners where there is a special celebration in the evening after the sunset. Mostly to poor people, but yes, these have been the donations of food and clothes. More importantly, the Diyanet has financed the reconstruction of the Ali Pasha Mosque in Ohrid. It's a historical mosque in the center of basically of the town. Nicely done and well appreciated. On the other hand, the Diyanet is also financing the building of the largest new mosque in Macedonia. It's located in the neighborhood of Čair, more specifically in Topansko Pole, so it's in Skopje, and when finished, it will be the largest mosque in the country. What are the economic relations? I have prepared a table, but since you cannot see it, I will briefly talk about the numbers myself. Trade between the last 20 years, so since independence until 2020, was $6.6 billion, or on average 220 million per year. Turkey has a sufficit, and Macedonia has a deficit. Turkey is also among the top 10 investors in Macedonia, and the FDI, the Turkish FDI, is between 4% in 2017 and 22% of the total FDI. 22% is last year, 2020. So of the biggest, the countries which are biggest investors in Macedonia, Turkey ranks second in the total amount of investments in the last 10 years. So this is a period of 2010 to 2020. Turkish companies have invested $353 million. The German companies have invested in the same period of 10 years, $391 million. The Austrian, about 300, the Italian, about 100. The French actually have minimal investment. The British have a big investment of $311 million in the period of 2010-2020. The least amount of investment Turkey made in Macedonia in 2017, $6.6 million. And this is the year when there was the beginning of the mandate of the Social Democrats in Zoran Zaev's government. So it could have been probably reluctance or waiting to see if this government will continue good relations with Turkey in general and with Turkish companies. Where are the investments of Turkish companies in Macedonia? They are in very strategic sectors. For example, in banking, you have Halkbank, which is one of these public banks, Turkish banks. In the airport management sector, there is TAV Holding, which meanwhile was bought, as far as I know, by French consortium, but in any case, it manages the airports in Skopje and Ohrid. We have investment in construction, very big apartment buildings. The biggest in Skopje were basically 44 floors apartment buildings were built by the Turkish company Cevahir. We have investments in the hospital sector, healthcare. The brand of Acıbadem has bought the local Sistina hospital. Then we have investments in the hotel industry. Limak Holding has just recently built a brand new 5-star hotels in the center of Skopje. We have investments in education, about which I will talk a minute later. We have had investments in supermarket chain. Ramstore has invested in Macedonia. Also, well-known Turkish brands, Collezione, Waikiki, Altimbaş, they have all opened clothing stores. Now, there are even 3 Turkish business chambers operating in Macedonia. One is called Musiad Macedonia. It's a branch office of Musiad from Turkey. The second one is called Matib, and the third one is called Mato. This last one, this Mato, is the biggest Turkish business chamber, which has 66 members and 10,000 employed persons by these companies. So it's a big boost of investment that Turkey does in Macedonia. Overall, there is also interest among specific Turkish students to come to study in Macedonia. Since 2009, therefore, Turkish citizens are the second biggest group moving to the country. The highest number was reported in 2015, 1,350 persons, mostly students, as I said before. The number of Turkish tourists is increasing. The maximum was 112,000 in 2018, and there is no wonder that Turkish Airlines has 4 flights per week, and Pegasus has 3 flights per week to Skopje. Not to forget that Turks in Macedonia are somewhere about 80,000, but this data is from the census of 2002, which is long overdue. And also there is a question of the identity, meaning that some of the persons who have declared themselves Turkish are of mixed marriages, Turkish-Albanian, let's say. Some of the persons who declared themselves in 2002 and still declare themselves as Turks are actually what are called locally Macedonian Muslims, Torbesh, or Gorani, Pomaci. There are various names for them in different countries in the region, but they are people who basically speak the local Slavic language and are Muslim by religious. And so, yes, not to forget that there are about 80,000 people who identify as Turks who are originally from Macedonia. Now, a few more slides. One is about education and culture. There have been investments of Turkish educational institutions in the country. In the primary and high school, in primary high schools, there is the Yahya Kemal College. Miša briefly spoke about it. It's basically one of the most prestigious primary and high schools in Skopje. But it has also branch offices around the country in Struga, in Strumic, and so on. Then there is the Marif International School opened in Tetovo recently, and in the International Balkan University, which offers classes in English and attracts students from all around the region. To be true to the matter, mostly Muslim students from the region and from the country itself, but as well as Turks from Turkey. The influence of Turkey in the country is also done through the Emre Yunus Turkish Cultural Center, which was opened in 2010 with the the Prime Minister Erdogan visiting the country at that time. Then in 2015, both Anadolu Agency and TRT World opened their local offices in Skopje and still operate. And of course, some very big influence in the field of culture are these Turkish soap operas, which are broadcasted on all but one national TV station, so the TV station which covers the whole territory of the country. Not only they are broadcasted, but they are very popular. 6 out of the 10 most viewed programs in 2019 were exactly Turkish soap operas. So 6 out of the 10 most viewed programs. It's quite a big number. It's controversial. It's very controversial, the issue of this Fethullah Gülen movement. And here we have had very fierce speeches of the Turkish ambassador, and also Turkish officials have repeatedly asked Macedonia to close down all schools, organizations, and media outlets associated with this controversial cleric. So one of them is this school Jahja Kemal. There is also the Zaman Macedonia newspaper, other organizations which offer language classes, tourist agency, transport agency, supermarket chain, and so on. I don't want to list them in more details. When we talk about controversies, we should also talk about this individual called Sedat Peker. Peker, I'm sorry for the pronunciation. In Turkish, maybe it's different, but okay, in any case, this person have been tried several times in Turkey for belonging to a criminal network, building a criminal network. He was sentenced 14 years in 2007, released on a parole in 2014. He fled again in 2020 when there was a new investigation into his criminal networks by the Ministry of Interior. Why is he important? He is important because on YouTube he posts videos in which he accuses senior Turkish government figures of various crimes, including murder, rape, corruption, and drug trafficking. How is he linked to Macedonia? He basically got a Macedonian passport and ID under the false identity of Jadin Ademovski. So he had a false, basically, identity, but a real official passport and official ID card issued to him. And he lived in Skopje in early 2021, where he met numerous officials, businessmen, and according to himself, the Prime Minister Zoran Zaev. Now, this is a specific case because we know that Zaev himself basically got into power by releasing videos on YouTube and in the public of supposed alleged criminal activities of the previous government. But just a side note, estimated 220 people have received such passports with false identities. Most of these people are drug traffickers and members of high-risk mafia clans, including those from Montenegro you might have heard of, Škaljarski clan, and so on. So this is one of the controversial things in joining the controversy about the Gülen movement in Macedonia. And I'm finishing now. Overall, the soft power of Turkey in Macedonia is direct and indirect. The direct projection of soft power in Macedonia is through frequent state official communication, meetings, joint projects, trainings, aid, and similar. Secondly, the direct way of influencing Macedonia is through economic investments. Of course, this is of the private sector, but still influences on the image Turkey has in the country, which is boosted by the indirect influence. So the Turkish soft power in Macedonia is increased through all sorts of cultural projects, educational projects, projects aiding and restoring religious buildings, and so on. And the media, I have spoken about the influence of the Turkish soap operas. What is up to discussion is whether the new government of Zoran Zaev would change the strategic alliance to Istanbul. We have seen that not much has changed in the numbers of investment, but it's a big question whether the Turkish government will be so close to the government currently in power in Macedonia as it was with the previous government of the right-wing conservative VMRO party. This is my basically presentation. I'm sorry I couldn't share it with you, the screen of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zhidas. It was really a very full and detailed presentation, and I have to mention that our colleague Professor Filis at chat warned you in a way that North Macedonia is official international, let me say, name for Macedonia, as we used to call it. So I have to just point out that Professor Filis sent his note here. We go further. Our colleague from Montenegro unfortunately has technical issues, and I hope that it will be solved until we come to the end of the panel. So we are continuing with the person who is at my right side here, Professor Jahja Muhasilović from International University of Sarajevo, who actually defended his PhD in Turkey, so he knows both sides, I may say, and from position of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Turkey as well. So Jahja, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to greet you all and thank you for coming. I would like to, I'll try to summarize the relations between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Turkey, and I'll focus on this last 3 decades period because we're speaking of short time of period, and I'll have to give some historical background in order to catch the whole picture when it comes to bilateral relations between the two countries. So, as all of you know, actually the modern relations between Turkey and Bosnia started with the dissolution of Yugoslavia. In the first instance, I would like to remind you that Turkey's position regarding the integrity of Yugoslavia and its territorial integrity was more in line of supporting the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia, but that slowly started shifting and changing when actually all the atrocities across Yugoslavia started happening, and especially in those years when actually the killings of a lot of the Muslims in Bosnia especially came to the attention of the international media, and that basically was a start when Turkey started changing its position regarding the integrity of Yugoslavia, and the years when there was a slow shift towards supporting the Muslims in the Balkans and their position, primarily Bosniaks, but later on Albanians as well. So those were the times when actually Turkey was led by Turgut Özal, who actually introduced a new and more dynamic foreign policy to Turkey. And those were the years when actually there was dissolution of Soviet Union going on, and when Turkey recognized that it could once again play much more important role in post-socialist areas like Balkans, Central Asia, so on and so forth. Turkey was one of the staunch supporters of the NATO intervention during the early 1990s, and it was basically trying to push other Western allies to militarily intervene in Bosnian conflict. Turkey, of course, on its own could not do much in that sense, so it was basically relying on the help of United States in that. As probably all of you know, United States was not initially very interested to get involved in the war, but eventually, as atrocities were continuing, and as they felt at the time that there was this balance going on where one side could prevail and basically ruin that balance on which the West was counting at the time, United States basically started to look ways to intervene in the war, and Turkey was a very beneficial in that sense. So basically there was an agreement between the Washington and Ankara to try to reconcile Bosniak and Croat side in order to fight the third side, which in this case was a Serb side. And there was a diplomatic initiative going on between Washington and Ankara, where basically Washington relied on good personal ties between, at the time, President of Turkey, Süleyman Demirel, and Franjo Tudjman, and they were very close personally, and they had very close relations. So with the help of United States, basically Turkey was involved in that process of reconciling Bosniaks with the Croats, which eventually led to the signing of Washington Agreement, which eventually created a Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which today constitutes 51% of the Bosnia's territory. As war was approaching its end, NATO basically decided to get involved in the Bosnian war, and Turkey was, as a member of the NATO, was basically involved militarily in that war. By defeating Bosnian Serb forces on the ground, that basically allowed NATO forces, primarily United States, but other countries as well, like Turkey, Italy, Germany, United Kingdom, so on and so forth, to position their military capacities inside Bosnia. So for the first time, after the basically after Ottomans withdrew from Bosnia, Turkey got chance to get militarily positioned in the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and basically to be militarily present in the Balkans in real sense. Of course, if we don't count the European Turkey as a part of the Balkans, which it is, but so basically Turkey, once again, it was an opening of a new Turkey, which was again back in the Balkans. So I would not say, like, I mean, in academia you would see that there's a dominant view that basically Turkey came back to the Balkans with the AKP. I would say that it was much before. So in the early 90s, basically Turkey officially for the first time was back again in the Balkans. As of course all that region, I mean our region that we are living in, Western Balkans, was unstable, Turkey had to act in the framework of NATO alliance, and Turkey itself, because of its internal problems and economic issues, did not have capacity to be much more influential in the region, but it had to heavily rely on its Western allies. Turkey's military got positions in the town of Zenica, and in the initial years there were more than 1,000 Turkish soldiers positioned in the town of Zenica, but that is nothing if you compare that there was almost 60,000 soldiers from the NATO which were militarily positioned in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and big majority of those forces were actually American forces, as all that process was and that involvement was basically pushed and sponsored by the United States. Anyways, when the war ended, when eventually we had that post-Dayton Bosnia and all that, which came with the Dayton, basically having a fragmented country along the ethnic lines, Turkey, because of its domestic problems in terms of politics and weak coalitions, which could not play significant role, which could not actually articulate a significant foreign policy, Turkey, through its official state channels, actually started being more invisible. But on the other hand, parallel to that process, you had that Turkey's non-state sector was pretty much active in Bosnia and Herzegovina, primarily through religious groups like Gülen movement, which was at the time not on bad terms with the governments as they are today. So Gülen movement started opening various schools across Bosnia, so they basically very quickly expanded their network, which was often started with the high schools, but later on moved to having primary school, university, and other kinds of foundations. So in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, basically Turkey's foreign policy was relying on that non-state sector. In 2002, AKP basically came to power, and that started slowly changing. Of course, the first mandate of the AKP, you could not tell any difference when it comes to relations with the Bosnia, as AKP itself probably was not much experienced when it comes to foreign policy, and it was basically building up its foreign policy regarding Bosnia. But that slowly started changing with the Ahmet Davutoğlu or in the late 2000s when he basically brought a new dynamism to Turkey's foreign policy. And you have that symbolic speech in 2009 in Sarajevo, when he basically, in the first days of his term, announced that Turkey is back, and basically said in the middle of Sarajevo that best years for the Balkans were the years when the Ottomans controlled the area. Of course, I mean, that created a lot of controversy in the region. Some agreed with his statements, some disagreed, but and we can have a discussion how much diplomatically that was clever to announce that openly. But anyways, so after the 2009, basically that the diplomatic initiative which was opened or paved by Ahmet Davutoğlu has brought new economic cooperation, which was boosting at the time, and Turkey very quickly expanded in terms of economy, financial presence, and other forms of presence, but also in terms of soft power as well. So those were the years when we started having Turkish series dominating the Bosnian screens. Not only Bosnian, but regional, I would say, as well. So Bosnia is not much difference in that sense than any other country in the Balkans. But if you follow the statistics, you would see that Turkey's influence in terms of economy, politics, soft power, so on and so forth, basically the peak of that influence was somewhere around 2013 or 14. And according to statistics, although in the last few years there is a slight increase in statistics, but until 2014, Turkey basically had some kind of peak in terms of economic, political, and other forms of influence. So after those years, due to the different factors like slowdown in Turkey's economic growth, like all those troubles that it was facing on diplomatic lines when it comes to relations with the West, and Turkey's that aim to play some kind of balanced game, all that has influenced actually Turkey's capacities in Bosnia. So that peak was never reached, that peak of 2014. When it comes to how Turkey is perceived in Bosnia and Herzegovina, you will see three different perceptions, and those three different perceptions are basically divided among the three ethnic groups. So you would see that the Bosniaks or Bosnian Muslims have very positive view of Turkey, and I would say probably the most positive view compared to all other ethnic groups in the Balkans, at least those ethnic groups who have nation state. Even comparing to Albanians, you would see that in Albania there is this that paradoxical view when it comes to Turkey, and I would say that actually Bosniaks are in that sense the closest to Turkey. Although even among the Bosniaks, and that was one of the questions yesterday, even among the Bosniaks you would say that there is a division when it comes to Turkey, where a conservative part of the population is more in favor of Turkey and Turkish influence, while secularist part of the Bosniaks have different view when it comes to that. But in general, we can say that the Bosniaks are more positive to Turkey's influence. When it comes to Bosnian Serbs and Bosnian Croats, you have some differences there. Croats in Bosnia actually are having much more negative view compared to Bosniaks, but it is slightly more positive compared to the position that Bosnian Serbs have. And you can of course check all this in the official surveys that are conducted across Bosnia. When it comes to Bosnian Serbs, we could say that they have the least positive view when it comes to Turkey's influence, not Turkey as a country or as some kind of culture, but as in question of Turkey's influence to Bosnia, which of course reflected itself to the position of the political parties which represent those three people. So you would see that until recently, Milorad Dodik and his SNSD would be very critical to Turkey's influence, and they would see Turkey's position in Bosnia as meddling country and country which is basically favoring one side, which would be Bosniak side, while HDZ or Croat side had some kind of ambiguous position on that, but as years are passing, their position regarding Turkey is becoming more and more negative. On the other hand, on the Bosnian political scene, you would see that there is no common position when it comes to Turkey. SDA, which represent the conservative Bosniaks and generally gathers generally got votes from that part of the population is, I would not say pro-Turkish, but it is for stronger influence of Turkey in Bosnia, and it has very close ties and close cooperation with Turkey. And for many years, relations between the Bosniak side and Turkey was going through channel of SDA, but in the recent years, we have some indication that that is slowly changing as SDA's power is diminishing. And interestingly enough, if we just focus on the bilateral relations and that diplomatic channels, something interesting is happening as Milorad Dodik, for example, became a president of Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of those three presidents, due to the very, very similar characteristics of himself or personality of himself with the Erdogan. There is some positive tone in the relation between Erdogan and Dodik because they are very similar in their ruling. So there are some positive wins in that sense. That basically seeing that Dodik is managing Erdogan better than Izetbegović is, basically has started creating some kind of tensions among the Bosniaks that they might lose privileged position, but Erdogan on many occasions openly basically sent a signal that it won't happen. So for Bosniaks not to worry in that sense. Also I would like to say something when it comes to economic relations with Turkey and Bosnia. So in the 1990s, relations between the two countries were dominated by the military cooperation, which was under the umbrella of NATO, and Turkey was present, as I said, only through the channels of non-state sector. And basically, you did not have any significant cooperation during the late 1990s and the early 2000s, but that will slowly start changing during the mid 2000s when Turkey basically got more aggressive in terms of having economic and financial relations, and you had basically significant rise in a couple of years, and Turkey basically reached the peak around 2011 and 12 and those years when it comes to economic relations between Bosnia and Turkey. And Turkey since then basically failed to expand its economic and financial relations and basically stick on the position of being not even being among the top 10 investors to Bosnia, and basically struggling somewhere on the 6th and 7th position when it comes to mutual trade between the two countries. And of course, all that has created some kind of dissatisfaction in Bosnia, where rhetoric and open sympathies for Bosnia basically did not follow that economic and financial dimension. And as it was mentioned by, I think, Professor Miša, there is a criticism among especially Bosniaks in Bosnia that Turkey is having a closer economic and financial relations with Serbia than it is having with Bosnia, and Turkey is basically still openly criticized for just sending kisses to Bosnia but investing in Serbia. But we can argue on whether how much that is true or not. I'm on position that it is not totally untrue, which some statistics are proving us, right? Also, besides this hard power dimension of military, political, and economic cooperation, actually where Turkey is very strong in Bosnia is this soft power, because culture is basically the strongest asset of Turkey in relations with Bosnia. Turkish cities are mentioned. Turkish cities, I was of opinion some years ago that domination of Turkish cities in the Bosnian media would diminish through time, but that did not happen. I was wrong. That basically remained at least in the same level, but I would say that there was even increase when it comes to popularity of Turkish cities. I made my personal analysis of that, and I saw that in the mainstream channels that are controlled by the Bosniaks, you had in some of the channels, actually in the majority of channels, you have 10 Turkish series daily. So those times when I was thinking that the influence of Turkish series or domination of Turkish series would diminish, you had 2 or 3 daily Turkish series. Today you have 10. So in that sense, I was definitely wrong. So Turkish series still are dominating the screens. It is of course hard to do a research whether on impact of those Turkish series. So because you have other series as well, we have American series. In the last years, very interestingly, you started having Arab series as well, generally financed by the Gulf countries. So I don't see that as some kind of coincidence. So you have all those series which are still, you have some kind of hyper-production of all kinds of series present in the Bosnian media, but I would like to see some kind of research which would try to quantify what is the feedback of those series and what is the influence of those series on Bosnian population and Bosnian public in general. Also, Turkey is very influential when it comes, very active in Bosnia when it comes to public diplomacy. So you have various public diplomacy institutions, among which the most well-known or the most dominant, the most active one is TIKA. TIKA is responsible for the restoration, for many years was responsible for the cooperation in the cultural sphere when it was basically restoring a lot of Ottoman buildings and was trying to restore the Ottoman legacy in Bosnia. Of course, all of you know that TIKA is active in other countries as well, but it is basically competing with other countries who are having USAID and other institutions, and it was very dominant in restoring Ottoman legacy. Interestingly, what is happening in the last years that another Turkish institution, which is called Institution for the Restoration of Pious Foundations, got permission from the Turkish government to be able to have overseas project, to implement overseas project, and after that, basically, it took from TIKA that restoration dimension, and it is now very active, even probably faster than TIKA is in restoring the Ottoman material legacy in Bosnia, because TIKA was stretched between agricultural projects, cultural projects, economic projects, and other forms of projects, humanitarian projects. But now this institution is focused on only restoring the Ottoman legacy. So it brought a new dynamics to restoration of Turkish and Ottoman legacy, material legacy in Bosnia and the Balkans in general. Of course, you have other institutions, of which one of the most famous is Yunus Emre, which is responsible for spreading Turkish language and introducing actually Turkish language and culture to people overseas. With the only a small difference, I won't go into the operational dimension of Yunus Emre, which more or less resembles operations in other countries in the Balkans, with the small difference that Yunus Emre signed one protocol with the relevant educational institutions in Bosnia and got the permission from the ministries to be able to teach Turkish language as a second language in the schools. I don't see that in other Balkans we have the similar case. If I'm not wrong, in few schools in Romania, a few years it was the case. And in Jordan and Georgia and Bosnia is the fourth country. And the country where this project is basically the most successful. So you had that, according to last statistics, somewhere around 7,000 and 8,000 Bosnian kids were learning Turkish as a second language in Bosnian schools, and somewhere around 30. This you can all check in the official documents. This is not anything secret. Somewhere around 30 schools in Bosnia were teaching Turkish as a second language in schools, and it solely depends on how much schools are interested to have Turkish as a second language. So it is totally depending on that cooperation agreement which would be signed between Yunus Emre and a certain school. Many were seeing this as some kind of Turkish imperialism, so on and so forth. But if you compare that to how much German language is being taught in schools, you would see that those statistics are comic. So German is between 7,000 and 8,000 Bosnian kids are learning Turkish as a second language, so compare that to the fact that 200,000 Bosnian kids are learning German. So it is like probably 30 times more than German. So you would see that actually that is that it cannot be in any ways any kind of language imperialism from the Turkish side. And interestingly enough, that Turkish as a second language, you would probably assume rightly, is taught only in the schools where Bosniak where there is a Bosniak domination. In general, also, maybe I might forget to say that in general you would see that Turkey, whether it is in economic relations, political relations, cultural relations, are generally with those areas where Bosniaks are living. And my personal opinion on that is, and we can have an debate on that, is I would blame generally Bosnian Serb and Bosnian Croat side on that, because I personally know I got the information that Turkey was trying to enter those areas, but they basically were not interested in Republika Srpska or in those cantons where Croats are majority. So I would say that the majority of blame for that is on Bosnian Serb and on Bosnian Croat side. So that would be it from my side. There is a lot to say. We can go much more into details, but I would wait that for the question part. So I would not like to take a chance for anyone to ask questions. So I would leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Muhasilović. And since we still can't reach to our colleague Tomasz Damjanović from Montenegro, who was supposed to give us a presentation on relationship between Turkey and Montenegro, we will probably stay without that here, but I hope that we will have it, and I'm pretty sure that we will have his contribution as an article in our proceedings. So we move further, and now we have, of course, as you see in Balkans, even organizing a conference scientific is always connected with certain controversial issues. I'm joking a little bit, but on the other hand, pointing out the fact that we have to be precautious how to cover the next issue in a way. And we will have two young experts also with a Turkish knowledge like our previous presenter, who will now go in this direction. First, Sladjana, our colleague Sladjana Zdravković, will focus on relationship between Turkey, or I may say Ankara, generally official, with the Belgrade and with Serbia proper, basically. And then we asked our colleague Srbulju Pejović, who will concentrate on, let me say officially, Kosovo footnote or Kosovo 1244 and so on. But in any way, we wanted to cover the whole this area, especially because relationship between Pristina and Ankara are very interesting in the last days. So, okay, I pass the floor to our colleague Sladjana Zdravković, please.
Thank you, dear director, and dear colleagues and friends and colleagues abroad, especially friends from Hanns Seidel Foundation. I am really pleased to be speaking today on this conference and to explain the topics named Serbia-Turkey relations in the past few years. It is paradoxical that the nation that has can you just give me this? I need sorry. It is paradoxical that the nations that has such a violent history, when we remember Serbs under the Ottoman Empire and its rule, now has without any doubt become one of the Turkish main supporters and allies in the region. In words of the President Erdogan to the Serbian newspaper Politika in 2020, bilateral relationships between Serbia and Turkey are at the moment better than ever. Is it working? Okay. One of his statements was from the visit to Belgrade, visit of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in October 2019. when, as you can see on the slide, he said we have strong relationship ties with the center, and we have many common words and history that is binding us. The two aspects are also the most relevant in which Turkish foreign policy in the Balkan region has an influence at the moment. The first one is the economic one, especially destined to large investments in critical infrastructures and to make possible free circulation of the goods and, of course, tourism and foreign investors from Turkey. And the second one is the security one, where the objective is to annul the influence of the Fethullah Gülen organization, putting pressure on his allies to accept extraditions, which in many cases go against the law, the countries themselves. To a lesser extent, Turkey's second objective is the hanging over the Kurds and political dissidents following the 2016 coup d'etat. An increase in cooperation between the two countries in the area of the security was also announced, reaching agreements in defense, police cooperation, and industry. According to the Balkan Inside Media, since the extradition in 2017 against the criteria of the United Nations, a Kurdish politician who was a refugee in Serbia demanded by Ankara cooperation between Serbia and Turkey has become constant since then. The good relationship between Belgrade and Ankara have also had an impact on the trilateral relationship promoted by Turkey with Bosnia. Erdogan's man in Bosnia is Bakir Izetbegović, son of Alija Izetbegović, president of the SDA Democratic Action Party, who is advised and supported by Erdogan's AKP party. Also, we must mention the second part, the meetings. As most important one, we should refer that two presidents have often had occasional meetings in Istanbul, Ankara, and Belgrade, and they refer to each other as dostlar, dost, which in Turkish means friends, very close friends. Also, the President Erdogan met with Ana Brnabić, the Prime Minister of Serbia. In the past few months, we had a change in diplomacy when it comes to Turkish embassy in Belgrade. Since the arrival of Hami Aksoy, the new ambassador in Serbia, in April 2021. As a replacement of the ex-ambassador Tanju Bilgic. We should point out this one, that Hami Aksoy also, as the Tanju Bilgic, was the spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Turkey, so that itself shows the importance of Serbia in Balkans and in the Republic of Turkey, Turkish Republic of Turkey plan. Also, during his appointment here, Hami Aksoy is determined to meet with many politicians in power, not just, for example, not just Prime Minister Ana Brnabić and Nebojša Stefanović, and also Zorana Mihajlović, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Mining and Energy. He also paid a courtesy visit to Aleksandar Vulin, Minister of Interior of Serbia, then Minister of European Integration Jadran Joksimović, and discussed area of cooperation with many others. Also, we had another change. Along with the arrival of the new ambassador, the new General Consul Bashar Bashol officially accepted his duty since 9th of April in 2021. Regarding economy, So this is the new ambassador, Hami Aksoy. As I said, he was a spokesman. That is really why it's not working. Let's see. Okay. The next. Economy. From the Ankara perspective, Serbia offers many opportunities to Turkish investors. We have to bear in mind that Serbia has signed with Turkish Republic in 2009 no visa and no tax payments agreement. When Turkish businessmen invest in Serbia, they're trying to reach wide geography without having to pay tariffs. Serbia is closer to Europe, so transportation costs decrease automatically. Besides, the Serbian state offers opportunity for foreign investors. For example, we have Chamber of the Commerce and Industry Serbia, who has published the guide for establishing a foreign company in Serbia, and one of them is, except in English, it was translated specifically for the Turkish investors in Turkish language. The second one is the Development Agency of Serbia, who has published a brochure about why invest in Serbia, also in English and in Turkish language. Besides, the volume of the bilateral trade was around $1.2 billion in 2018, while last year, while in 2019, it totaled $1.3 billion. The Ankara government's plan, even though is facing with a high percent of unemployment and the inflation, is to increase this number in the following years to $5 billion. Turkish business people are gladly investing in Serbia. Two countries have signed an agreement during the president's visits on October in 2019 and had a groundbreaking ceremony for one. Back in 2011, Turkish investments totaled just $1 million, while the value of investments of Turkish firms in Serbia today stands for around $200 million. More than 800 Turkish firms are operating in Serbia today with about 10,000 jobs. Regarding the soft power that we have mentioned with Bosnia and generally exists in Balkans, we must, of course, talk about TIKA. Yeah. In this game of alliance, steel gloves and iron fists plays a fundamental role in Turkish diplomacy as a channel for Ankara investments. The TIKA, Turkish Agency for Cooperation, which is created in 1991, that has become a tool for economic, political, and cultural cooperation that is indispensable for Turkish diplomacy. TIKA currently manages cooperations, investments, and development projects in more than 150 countries. For example, we can mention also the Yunus Emre Center that is located not just in Serbia but in the local countries, Albania, Bosnia, North Macedonia, and as they call it, Kosovo, because Turkey recognized Kosovo. And the Diyanet, of course, Presidency of Religious Affairs. The number of Serbian people who have studied Turkish at the Yunus Emre Institute in Belgrade over the last 10 years was 900. On 14th of June 2021, Istanbul Technical University organized graduate school open days for international students. For those one in Serbia who who are eager to apply and who wants to study in Turkey. TIKA has completed 257 projects on which it spends over $30 million today. These include humanitarian and development assistance as well as some renovation projects. The Turkish embassy is the most proud of the restoration of the Golubac fortress, on which has spent $3 million. We can see here why is it on the slide the importance of the Golubac fortress and the history of it, but and where it's located on the side of the Danube River, and we can see before and after restoration. Next slide. Tika is also managing to attract more students to Turkey, Serbian students especially to Turkey. So now, due to pandemic situation, is organizing online, for example, journalism training programs or online history lectures and such things as well. After the success of Golubac fortress, monuments according to plan should be restored in Belgrade. That is the plan. Užice, Raška, and Novi Pazar. Regarding the highway, also the groundbreaking ceremony of the Belgrade-Sarajevo highway took place while the renovation of the Novi Pazar-Tutin road has also begun. The groundbreaking ceremony for opening the start of the working of the part Kuzmin-Sremska Rača, as you can see where it is, was held during the visit of the Turkish president to Serbia on 8 October on the 8th October of 2019. The loan agreement signed between Turkish banks and Serbia was last year approved by the Serbian National Assembly on the 3rd February 2020 and was published in the official gazette. Therefore, work on the section of the highway between Sremska Rača and Kuzmin continues according to the terms of the contract. And last but not least is the Turkish stream gas. Regarding the Turkish stream gas pipeline, we must mention two parts. The first one, Turkish Stream 1 carrying gas to Turkey, is already completed and they are already receiving gas. Turkish Stream 2, which is supposed to carry the gas to Europe via Turkey, is still under construction. However, its Turkish-Bulgaria section has been completed. Bulgaria started receiving gas on the 1st January 2020, while Greece has also been receiving gas through this connection. The next on the plate is the construction Bulgaria-Serbia, as you can see on the map, and Serbia-Hungary section of the pipeline, which is supposed to carry natural gas to Europe. Since my colleague has a lot to explain regarding the relationship with Pristina, I won't take your time anymore, so I will just thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sladjana. This was really concise but very detailed. And we finish with our colleague. You may take the mic. Yeah.
Should I speak from here or?
Yeah, I think you can. They will adjust to that. Without further ado, please, our colleague Pejović will speak about the relationship between Ankara and Pristina, let me say.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers, the realization crew, and the foremost the public that survived all these expositions. In the ending of this conference, we will talk about relations between the current secessionist regime in the autonomous province of Kosovo and Turkey. This photo that you can see in the background of the first slide would be very much representative of the stance of the public in 2015-2016. Whether that's the case today, we will see. But first of all, we must see how did we come to this photo. So the relations between Turkey and the autonomous province of Kosovo have de facto started in 1992 with the establishment of the Kosovo office in Istanbul. The office was, its headquarters were put in Grand Halic Hotel in Istanbul. They were supposed to become official institution in 1996, but they didn't succeed in that effort, partly due to efforts of the then ambassador of Yugoslavia, Darko Tanasković. Nonetheless, the relations remained until the declaration of independence of the current regime in Kosovo in 2008. In addition, we must say that Turkey had given support to the so-called Kosovo Liberation Army and the political fugitives from Kosovo. Also, the members of the said army were trained in Izmir at the Turkish base. After the current regime proclaimed independence in 2008, Turkey was among the first countries to recognize its independence, but also it had a huge diplomatic effort. Many of the countries such as Egypt, Pakistan, Brunei are believed to have accepted Kosovo's so-called independence, as well as organizations such as IMF and the World Bank. So just a moment. During the first years of Kosovo's so-called independence, relations between two key political players in the respective territories, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Hashim Thaçi, were institutionalized, meaning they met each other at their official capacities. But over the time, those relations became what some media refer to as genuine friendship. Basically, they avoided these official capacities. They met tete-a-tete mostly in Istanbul or Ankara, naturally. Also, Erdogan has given PR, let's call it PR support, to Hashim Thaçi in his election campaigns in 2010 and 2013. One might remember the 2013 campaign when Erdogan said the famous sentence that Kosovo is Turkey, Turkey is Kosovo, which hugely polarized the public in the said province. As much as the famous attempt of coup d'etat in 2016 is concerned, Erdogan put crucial value on his authority and loyalty, if we may call it that, of the Balkan leaders. In that win, we might see that some of the first leaders to congratulate Erdogan in that night were Edi Rama and 24 minutes later Hashim Thaçi himself. That had a huge symbolical influence considering that West failed to provide any support to President Erdogan. Another show of personal politics between these two political figures happened in 2018 when 6 Turkish citizens were arrested and deported to Turkey due to connections with the FETÖ or Hizmet, let's call it Gülenist movement in Kosovo. As far as other issues are concerned, the more contemporary ones, we have the issue of establishment of the so-called Kosovo's embassy in Jerusalem. that had a huge impact on the politics between these two entities. First of all, we may remember that the then so-called Prime Minister Abdullah Hoti signed the agreement with President Vučić and President Donald Trump. Even though the Turkish government, most of all, naturally President Erdogan, did insist on a revision of this movement, the so-called Embassy of Kosovo was established in Jerusalem in March of this year. Another interesting questions are the Turks of Kosovo. As one might know, there are about 18,000 ethnic Turks in Kosovo, meaning about 1% of total population. Majority of them live either in town of Prizren or the village of Mamuša. Turkish language is official in the regions where they live, but that happened only after diplomatic efforts of Turkey. The Consulate General in Prizren was opened in 2015, and what can be seen in these days is that the Deputy Foreign Minister of Turkey expressed his concerns that the Turkish population of Kosovo might be undercounted on the census that is supposed to happen this year. On the other hand, there is also often repeated claim that there are more people of Kosovo Albanian origin in Turkey than in Kosovo itself. As Professor Muhasilović already said yesterday, that's quite impossible to determine, but it's what figures in the public sphere. As far as the security cooperation goes, Turkey has been active in the NATO framework of KFOR in the province of Kosovo since the war of 1999, when it deployed 1,000 soldiers. Currently, there are about 250 soldiers deployed in the province. Also, Turkey has been active in missions such as ULEX, UNMIK, and OSCE missions in Kosovo. Turkey also gave support in the field of professionalization of the security forces of the secessionist regime, both when Kosovo Protection Corps became Kosovo Security Force in 2009, and when it started transforming in what they call the regular army or Kosovo Armed Forces in 2018. Also, the so-called police of Kosovo has been receiving training in fighting against organized crime, terrorism, and cybercrime in the Intelligence Academy and Training Center, the so-called ISAKEM in Turkey. Also, we have huge donations from the organization TIKA, which donated various laboratories for document analytics, ballistics, and so on, mostly in 2015 and 2016. After the mentioned attempt of coup d'etat in 2016 in Turkey, for which the so-called veto by Fethullah Gulen was accused, President Erdogan publicly urged Thaçi to take immediate action. He alleged that the Gulen movement has its largest organizational network in Kosovo. As we might see here, the Gulenist movement had a wide network of organization in the province of Kosovo. In the year of 2000, the Gülistan Education Institution has founded its first Mehmet Akif College, then in Pristina, now in Lipljan, with branches in Prizren and Đakovica. Mehmet Akif College deals mostly with primary and secondary education, but the circle has been completed with kindergarten called Ilka, in Prizren, and also the network for education and culture called Atmosfera, established in Prizren, which targets high school and university students. Also, the Gülenist movement undertook publishing and translation of Fethullah Gülen's books. What I'm talking about now seems completely unrelated to the diplomatic questions, but we have to have the following things in mind. The son of Hasan Tači, the son of Ramush Haradinaj, and the children of the ex-president of the so-called Kosovo Assembly, Jakub Krasniqi, were all educated in these schools. As a reward for this feat, the Gülenist movement received financial donations from the secessionist regime in Kosovo, as well as public land for school buildings free of charge. Due to diplomatic pressures from Turkey, the so-called Kosovo Intelligence Agency, in cooperation with the Turkish National Intelligence Organization, the so-called MIT, detained 6 key figures of the movement in March of 2018. Then so-called Prime Minister of the secessionist regime, Ramush Haradinaj, asserted that he had not been informed about these actions, and he has immediately dismissed Minister of the Interior and the Director of the Kosovo Intelligence Agency. This movement has both provoked a political crisis on Kosovo, that is between Tači and Haradinaj, but also it provoked diplomatic crisis between Turkey and the so-called Kosovo. You can see that Erdogan frequently slammed this move of Haradinaj. Nonetheless, the FETO movement still operates in the province of Kosovo. It owns several TV channels, newspapers, magazines, and websites financed through several foundations in the province. Some of these schools have nurseries in Prizren, Đakovica, Lipljan, and Pristina, and they also provide primary and secondary education. Among them, some often offer dormitories to male and female students. In contrast, international Ma'arif schools in Kosovo have been active in Prizren, mostly with its seven different schools since September of 2017. As far as the field of the public diplomacy goes, some of previous speakers have repeated this claim. I will repeat it for the sake of simplicity too. The public diplomacy has been put in practice since the ruling Turkish AKP party came to power in 2002. One of the first instruments of influence was the organization of TIKA, which established presence in the province in 2004. In addition to organized courses of Turkish language, the organization also organized vocational education and entrepreneurship trainings in Turkey. Of course, the most visible activities by the organizations were in the field of restoration of cultural heritage, such as the so-called Mehmed Akif Ersoy Mosque in Pristina or the Emin Pasha Mosque in Prizren. What you can see here is actually hammam in Pristina. I think it's called Fatih, but I'm not 100% sure. Both of these ceremonies regarding the mosques were attended by Erdogan via video link, of course. Also, TIKA organizes track tours, culture shows like Hajivat Karagyozov and Whirling Dervishes. Other important activities include significant medical and food donations. This was, of course, proven to be important in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Various other organizations such as Turkish Red Crescent, Turkish Diyanet Foundation, of course, medical institutions, Yunus Emre, are very active. As far as the official polls go, they show that the population in province maintains mostly positive perceptions toward the Turkey. However, the same polls show a rather sharp negative turn in perception after 2015, from about 85% to 70% of people interviewed showed positive perception. Various factors such as the fear of the perceived Islamist agenda of Turkey, suspicion of corruption of officials in big projects, and in Kosovo, and arrests connected to Gülenist movement contributed to that decline. It's also important to say that the use of the perceived Ottoman past in the positive context, a practice that can be traced to Turkish official demands for change of the narrative concerning the Ottoman era in 2010, are a source of controversy in the province of Kosovo.
Time. Just, we are about to finish. Sorry for interrupting you.
Okay. So, lastly, this is the concept art of the supposed central mosque in Pristina, which was supposed to be started in 2012. But its neo-Ottoman architecture caused many controversies during the last year, as can be seen by protests of some of the ex-KLA members. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and sorry for interrupting you, because I know that there is plenty of material that's also very interesting to us, but actually we are, as it's usual, but we crossed at least for half an hour from what we were supposed to have. So we, after this long day at the pleasant 40 degrees in Belgrade, I know that there are still like 15-16% present at chat, and still we have more than 10 people here. So thank you all very much for more than valuable contributions and a lot of very interesting material that we had the chance to see. So I think that we still have some time for debate, questions, comments, whatever it is. I asked just one thing that Professor Umut Uzur put at the chat. I will quote him, which was very interesting concerning the Bosnia and Herzegovina. He said, interestingly, there was a stamp on which Dodik was illustrated in Turkey by its postal organization, PTT. There was a lot of reaction for Bosniaks living in Turkey as well as others. And our colleague Igrutinović found that, which is very interesting to see Turkey Cumhuriyet PTT official stamp. I have it in front of me with Milorad Dodik, and of course it was commemorating actually recent Antalya summit in which Mr. Dodik was present. So there are interesting development there. Do we have some questions, ideas, comments, whatever? From chat or even from the public? Rajko Petrović, please. Do we have mic? Yes. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rajko Petrović, Institute of European Studies. Mr. Muhasilović, one question. Can you tell us something more about the perception of Bosniaks and Bosnia and Herzegovina in Turkish society today, especially when we speak about younger population there? Thank you.
If I understood correctly, perception of Turkey among the younger Bosniaks. Perception of Bosnia and Bosniaks among Turks. Okay. Well, generally, I can say that Turkish society is, very friendly towards the Bosniaks, and there is, in general, there is a positive view when it comes to Bosniaks due to the different reasons. One was the Bosnian War, because during the 1990s, when Bosnian War was going on, there was a lot of attention paid by the local Turkish media to that war, and all that has created some kind of sympathy among the Turkish population. Even I would say that during those years, I mean, because you had almost parallel to Bosnian War, there was a war going on in Azerbaijan between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the Nagorno-Karabakh. And despite the fact that Azeris are Turkic people and very close to Turkish people, or Anatolian Turks to put it that way, I could say that Bosnian War even created more attention among the Turkish population. And interestingly enough, so it is not the case like it is maybe among the Bosniaks, where you have like two kinds of feelings when it comes to Turks, which is divided among the conservative and the secular part of the population. But in Turkey, I would say that I'm speaking now about ethnic Turks, not other maybe Kurds or other groups, but ethnic Turks, which are the majority, approximately 80% of the population, at least officially. So I would say that there is no much difference when it comes to political orientation of Turkish people regarding the feelings towards the Bosniaks. So you would see that even the secular part of the Turkey's population has sympathies towards the Bosniaks, but the reasons are different. Conservative Turkish population they have sympathies towards the Bosniaks because of the religious dimension and because of the Ottoman past and the fact that the Bosniaks played very important role in the Ottoman administration and all those important figures in the Turkish history which have Bosniak origin. All that has influenced the opinion of the conservative part of the Turkish population, and during the war they generally have some kind of feeling that the Bosniaks were fighting. I'm speaking now of exclusively Islamist part of the Turkish population, or those who are oriented toward the political Islam. They were seeing that the Bosniaks were resisting as a Muslims inside Europe and fighting against, bravely fighting, to survive as along the Albanians only European Muslims who are autochthonous to that continent. While on the other hand, among the seculars, you would have different reasons for liking Bosniaks. So they are seen as the European Muslims who are more progressive in terms of secularism, in terms of being open to globalism, in terms of being more integrated into Europe, in terms of annihilating any kind of harmful influence that is coming from the Middle East, from the Arab world, so on and so forth. So you would see that there is a strong sympathy towards Bosniaks, which transcends to all dimensions of the Turkish population, but the reasons are different. So I don't know whether that answered your question or not.
Thank you very much. Do we have something more? Some other comments or whatsoever? I will just ask you for maybe further comments, actually for let me say all of you, because you were mentioning one very interesting thing, speaking the language. Actually, and I found, for example, that very nice paper from the journalist Asli Aydin Tazbash. She wrote a couple of years ago a very nice paper for European Policy Center about From Myth to Reality, about relationship actually Turkey and the Balkans, in which she also very rightly I think succeeded to emphasize this privatization of relationship on which you showed Srba and Sladjana as well, and many other were speaking that really after, in this post-Davutoglu era, we have much more, let me say, direct personal relationship of friends and so on. But on the other hand, she noticed that actually maybe one of the least successful was this language promotion, if I may say, actually. That there was the idea that, especially with the series, soap operas, which are really very, very, very popular, as we all know, everywhere around, that it didn't really spawn much bigger interest maybe for language, and Sladjana mentioned it's 900 of students here. You said that actually, Jahja, that the only place that really introduced Turkey in, let me say, much more broader way is Bosnia and Herzegovina in that sense. Could you a little bit comment upon that? If she was right, maybe that there were more expectation that more people would learn language, and that maybe something could go from that perspective better in the future for all of you.
For all of us.
Yeah.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Okay. Thank you for the question. I will be saying like this regarding the Turkish language. It is very popular in Serbia today, especially in 2019. The Semre celebrated 10 years of its existence here in offices here in Belgrade, and that time I said that they were doing statistics, and they saw that during these 10 years. The 900 students were going to the classes, yes, to the classes and studying English, Turkish, pardon. But also that is not the main reason. I'm actually often going to Semre and cooperating with them. And the main reason why those students are coming to the classes are really the series they're watching, because that is what is attracting them. The life in Istanbul, the life in Turkey is. They're always asking me the same question: is the Turkey such a lovely, wonderful country full of heartwarming people? And is it Turkish language easy to learn, because we want to go there, we want to live there, we want to move there, we want to start some cooperation with the Turkish investments here in Serbia. So for the business perspective, and from the perspective of living abroad, or just knowing Turkish from their own interests. They here are very much. Here is very big in Serbia is big interest in for Turkish language. So, and that will be continued, as I can see, because I almost said çünkü, which means because in Turkish, because. They organized during the pandemic sessions. They organized online classes, so they had a lot of students who were willing to watch and to participate to those classes. So I don't believe that that will be stopped anytime soon. Regarding Bosnia.
Okay.
Regarding Bosnia, when it comes to...
Generally, I thought you mentioned Bosnia, but generally the region.
Okay, so in Bosnia, according to law, every student is required to learn English as an obligatory language, but according to law, we have right to choose which second language you're going to be taught in the schools. And generally, it is parents who decide. So which language would be learned by the children. So as I said, and you have an option. It's not only Turkish versus German, but you have options of German, Turkish, Arabic, French, even Russian, even Greek, which is interesting, and that is, yeah, that's very interesting. So you have all those options. Turkish is ranked somewhere between second and third when it comes to popularity of being a second language, and definitely seen is dominated by German language. And everyone agrees on one thing. The reason why German is so dominantly taken by the children is because parents decide, and parents actually are thinking about this. So if my kid learns German, eventually it will have much more economic benefits for my kid, because he or she might end up working in Germany. So there is definitely economic dimension which is incorporated in that decision, why Turkish is not taken as much as German is. So while, I mean, as long as we have the situation where our youth is emigrating to Germany rather than Turkey, I think we will have a situation where Germany is basically dominating as a second language in our schools.
Thank you.
If I may add just a few sentences about the province of Kosovo, it is exception to this rule, because there are more than 300,000 people that speak Turkish in Kosovo. But that is not due to either Gülenist or Yunus Emre institutes. That is basically because of two reasons. One is that there is a huge community of Albanians in Turkey, as I said, and also there is a significant community of Turks in Albania. There are many commercial and economic yes, so basically there is also an economic factor, because Turkey is much more present in Kosovo economically than in states like Bosnia.
Yeah, okay, it's functioning. Can you hear me? Did you hear? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I will repeat, sorry. My question for Zhidas was that actually, can you hear me now? Okay. That you mentioned briefly at the end that after 2017 and the change in Skopje in government, there were initial hesitation, expectation, what will be the future prospect for the relationship and so on. And that you said that de facto at the end, 4 years ago, there were no any changes in that sense, you know. So could you give us, please, some comment about that? Does it mean also that military cooperation and these kind of trainings that you were speaking about were also continuing and so on? Thank you very much. And after that, I will ask Professor Uzer to join us as well.
Quickly then, there were expectations that things will change, especially that Zaev said that now Greece is the biggest promoter of Macedonian Euro enlargement agenda, and that there were some kind of promises for better economic ties, more investments and so on. But so in a way, there was a worry that Greece would somehow replace Turkey as big economic partner, political ally, and so on. But this has not happened. This has not happened, and it's very interesting that neither has Bulgaria improved its own relations with Macedonia after the friendship agreement. So in principle, as I said in the presentation, the Turkish investments in Macedonia have actually grown to the level that they are the highest now since the beginning of since the last 10 years. So all sorts of cooperation goes on with Turkey. Although, as I said, there is a little bit of a worry that this Zaev government might change Turkey with Greece as the biggest strategic partner in the region. Thank you.
Professor Uzer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this wonderful conference. It was really interesting hearing from different experts on different countries. The thing I like about the Balkans is that we seem to have a history. I mean, it's obvious, but we kind of speak the same language in a sense. And now that we have better relations in this era, I think it's even more interesting than, say, I don't know, Western Europe. But this region definitely makes it more interesting from many different angles. I would like to ask you, Miša, a question. If I understand correctly, during the Davutoğlu era, there were some concerns in Serbia as far as Turkey's involvement in certain regions. So could you, and after he was gone, relations seem to have improved. I mean, are these related, and what were the concerns? I mean, I know some of his discourse, but some of that discourse came from now President Erdogan as well. So it's definitely something that is interesting. And why is it that, I mean, the experience I had was that the most sympathetic people in the Balkans towards the Turks was the Bosniaks. Whereas when it came to the Albanians, and I don't know if our colleague from Albania is still here. I'm looking at the Zoom, but I don't think he's here anymore. But maybe Jahja can help us. I mean, I understand the Bosniak dimension, but what about the Albanians? Their relationship or approach towards Turkey is a bit ambivalent. Yes, there's sympathy, but there's also some criticism. So if Jahja or anyone else can build up on that topic, I'll be very happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us the whole day long, actually, and thank you for joining us in discussion and for the questions. I will try really to be brief after everything, and I invite also the colleagues to join us. You're right in a way that from 2009 with Davutoğlu, there were really mixed feelings. On one hand, there was, of course, initiating trilateral, and we should not forget actually that Davutoğlu was also initiating this kind of, let me say, some level of rapprochement in diplomatic terms with Serbia at that time, and that many moves were made at that time with visit of President Gül, and Sladjana spoke about this visa cancellation. Many things were open. But on the other hand, you know that actually Professor Davutoğlu was sometimes, let me say, clumsy in some of the statements which were not very well accepted all around. But also the President Erdogan, we remember this very brutal statement of Kosovo is Turkey, Turkey is Kosovo. Then also some of his not really diplomatic approach in Bosnia and so on. So of course you may understand that it really made this hesitation from the perspective of Serbia, Republika Srpska, and so on and so on. So you're right, it was not black and white. There were some good moves, but also the let me say meddling or of Diyanet within internal affairs of Islamic community in Serbia was also very controversial issues. Though we don't have to forget that Mr. Jeremić, who was at the time Minister of Foreign Affairs, at one moment officially invited Diyanet to help solving the problem, which really was not very well accepted in Serbia proper, and so on and so on. So there were many of those things that are really, how should I say, very badly accepted and spawned the hesitation among the Serbs. But definitely after 2015, 2016, first the rhetoric of Mr. Erdogan has changed. We didn't have, correct me if I'm wrong, any kind of problematic statement of this kind from Turkish officials. Then his private relationship with Vučić were really good, and not only that, but you see public, it was very important for both sides to publicly display this kind of, let me say, not only rapprochement, but even much more of that, which including, you remember the sinning of Osman Aga by our Minister of Foreign Affairs in private party for Erdogan, and so on and so on. So in that sense, I think that there is a general perspective. Of course, there is economic, Sladjana was speaking about that, I don't want to remind that actually I think 1/3 of the general export of Turkey to the Balkans is going to Serbia, so it's also very important and so on. And concerning Albania, I'm also sorry that our friend from Albania, our colleague, is not here, but because he correct me in one way. I definitely he knows that much better than me. And I trust him when he says that actually, from his perspective, these are the best relationship in history somehow. On the other hand, we all know that I spoke about Albanian factor, not only about Albania proper, but also about the Albanians in Macedonia, in of course at Kosovo, generally in Serbia and so on. There were many of, let me say, misunderstandings. Srba just mentioned he didn't have time to display all of them, but there was that case of public petition of intellectuals, the most leading intellectuals in Pristina, who were claiming actually the dispute was not only about the history textbooks actually, but also they, if I remember, they asked from the government to stop with further Turkish investments there, because they said that they are slowly becoming some kind of colony, which was not acceptable and so on. In Macedonia, I was directly present from 2014 sorry, Northern Macedonia, but at that time it was former, I will be very precise, former Republic of former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. When I really had the chance to see, Zhidas could testify that much more actually, the general approach was that, as you know, Albanians were not really happy with their future within that country, and from 2001 onwards there were constant moves for more of, let me say, autonomy, self-rule or whatsoever, while on the other hand Turkey was very precise that it was against that, and that it wanted to have that country in a position as Davutoglu somehow presented that as a whole, very important, that practically it was much more important than Albanian issue and so on. That, I think we could speak much more upon that, but I already spoke. I hope that you are satisfied with that. Please, colleagues, join us.
You ask, like, if I understood you well, like some kind of comparison between why Bosniaks have so positive view and why Albanians does not have view which is positive to same extent. I will try to answer that, because I don't know how right it is for me to speak about the Albanian case, but as much as I understand, and I'll try to explain that in the Turkish context. So Albanians have something similar like Kurds have in Turkey. They have very secularized and almost atheistic political and intellectual elite, while on the same time they have pretty conservative base. So something similar you have in Turkey, where Kurdish political and intellectual elite is left-leaning, almost to an extent to being an atheistic, while Kurds are pretty much conservative population. Although Albanians are not conservative as a people as Kurds are, but they are pretty much conservative compared to their own political and intellectual elite. So very often you would see in Albania that they would emphasize the pre-Ottoman history of Albanians as a people, and by doing that they would generally emphasize the fact that they used to be mainly Catholics, although there were some Orthodox as well, but mainly Catholics. And you would see that even cases of some kind of religious conversion among the political and intellectual elite among Albanians. So that basically explains why there were protests in Pristina against the mosques, which resembles Ottoman period. And you would see often in the historical textbooks of Kosovo and Albania that Ottoman past is generally depicted negatively, not much different than it is in maybe Greek, Bulgarian, Serb, Croat textbooks, so on and so forth. When it comes to Bosniaks, I would connect that, although I mean there is some kind of cultural sympathy which is very similar to cultural sympathy that goes on between the Serbs and the Russians. So it is almost of same nature. But besides that, there is some kind of confusion among the Bosniaks, or Bosniak elite to be more precise, where they, unlike Albanians, they do not emphasize the pre-Ottoman history Although Bosnia was much stronger in that sense when it comes to statehood, of having a statehood before the Ottomans, where you had a unique church, unique letter system, you have unique tombstones. So compared to Albanian medieval period, Bosniaks, although they have much more to offer in that sense, you would see that they would generally elite, at least those conservative leaning, would generally ignore pre-Ottoman past. As that probably distinguished them from Croats and from Serbs, that religious dimension which was brought by the Ottomans. So I would generally connect that, just to summarize it, connect that to two different approaches by the two different political and intellectual elites. On one side, Albanians are having that strategy which I just explained, while Bosniaks are having a different kind of strategy, and that basically has reflected itself to some kind of general view when it comes to Turkish people and the Ottoman past.
Thank you, Jahja. And since it's now 4 o'clock here, we've been working for 4 hours already, and we are hungry, and if we don't cease, we will stay without the lunch at the end. I'm joking a little bit, but definitely it's about time to finish this. And let me really congratulate to everybody who survived all 4 hours with us today, colleagues here and you who are with Zoom. And let me really thank first and above all to our presenters and teachers in a way today, because we really learned quite a lot during and along this travel today. I think that we heard a lot of material, and I hope that we could get all of this into one good collection of proceedings or one book that will be in English, and I hope that we will have very good overview that might be interesting and receptive also for our Turkish colleagues, for our Western colleagues, Russian colleagues, and everybody who is interested in Turkish foreign politics, but also in the Balkans today. We opened so many issues, and I get to know that actually we didn't even mention sport, for example, one of the most important things that is really connecting our countries in a way. I just have to remind us that at one moment, I think the first 5 of Turkish basketball national team, which used to be very good, the second in the World Cup and so on, consisted of the people who have origin or directly came, like Mr. Jaković or Turkjan and Hidayet Davutoglu, sorry, it's definitely I'm hungry, and who was very popular, actually our brother, as he said, and Turkoglu. I'm joking, and we had the chance to see our friend who is now one of the leaders, actually, not only Korkmaz but the other player who is in Cavaliers. No, Čedi Osman, I think. Čedi Osman, speaking fluently in, let me call it, our language or whatsoever. And in many ways, there are in the literature cases of our basketball players, or which is interesting, female volleyball players who were very much celebrated and so on. So I'm just pushing more material, and I think that there are, of course, we mentioned that there will be problems in the future. There were many conflicts and so on, but also many good things that we can build upon. And please, Sladjana.
I just have to say one thing that was related to your question. The tensions and the speech, of course, changed, especially after 2016 and the coup d'etat, and when President Vučić, he was president, right? No, Prime Minister Tomislav Nikolić, he expressed the strong feelings of Serbian people towards Turkey, and any help that we can give, we will, and he offered any help from Serbia to Turkey directly to Erdogan. Also, Erdogan was first to congratulate him on the president elections. And today, the diplomacy language is changed. For example, the ex-ambassador Tanju Bilic is always, for example, in the interviews, always saying how he likes Red Star. For example, his favorite team is Red Star in Serbia. But the diplomacy language is changed the way that they focus now on the Greece. So in the magazine, on the interview for the magazine Course, he said that we need to share the burden for the migrant crisis. So they changed the focus to Greece and Mediterranean, and the neo-Ottomanism was not more in the focus of his speeches here, not in Erdogan's, not in ambassadors.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the intervention, and thank you all at the end. And of course, I really want to note from courtesy, express our gratitude to Hanns Seidel Stiftung and Jelena, who stayed with us the whole day long. And I hope that we will all together continue to work on these issues. I think that we created very important and good intellectual network, and really looking forward for this collection of work. But also I think that this issue will be interesting in the future, and especially that we got such a brave and great young experts with what is the most important knowledge of the language, all the languages that are involved, and I hope that they will continue to build intellectually in the future. Thank you all of this, and we are closing now with this. Thank you very much.